the dreadful realities that we should be confronting.
Yeah, exactly. And the mayor doesn't help here. Sadiq Khan.
He doesn't help in anything.
Sadiq Khan has said that he's happy with intelligence-led stop and search. Well, that will only be a minute fraction of the stop and search that the police could carry out, but they're very concerned about doing that. Well, and of course, Idris Elba has done a programme about it.
Yeah, but you know this, if Sadiq Khan thinks it, that's wrong every single time. Yes. Stick with Petrie. She'll take you through to 1 a.m. You've been an amazing audience. We're going to do it again tomorrow at 7 p.m. You better be there.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good evening to you. It is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock, as usual. So at midnight, I do want to discuss this with you. Most Britons want to bring back the death penalty. And this is again a reasonable survey saying that, you know, there's this number of people, 3 in 5 millennials, those are the ones born between the early 80s and the mid 90s, make up the biggest proportion in Britain, and 58% of them would like to bring back the death penalty. Now, it really is the most unlikely, mind you, I've said that before about politics, but it really is not likely to come back. But I want to know why you want it to come back. And it's very easy for us to see what happened in Southport and say a scumbag like that should just be dead. That's it. You know, they've got no right to be breathing the same air. And I get that, but that feels is that, I don't know, is that punishment, revenge? What is that? I mean, look, he's going to be in prison for 52 years before he gets parole, so he's likely to die in there. And I suspect he won't live to see the 52 years, to be perfectly honest with you. And I can't imagine that he's going to be in the lap of luxury in those 50 years. However, it will cost us £2.5 million. But when you consider the cost of the death penalty as well, I mean, it's not cheap, it's not free. And I'll go through some of those numbers a little bit later on, what it costs in America to put people to death, and how long it takes. Again, it's not just immediate, it's not just the next day. Some people are on death row in the US for decades before they actually get the needle or the whatever it might be, the electric chair. But I just wonder if do you really think that this is the answer? Again, looking at the United States, you can see quite clearly that it is not a deterrent. It doesn't have a deterrent factor, and that you can tell because there are so many people on death row. They didn't go, oh, I'm not going to do that because I could end up dead. So I don't. Does it have the deterrent factor? Is it about the revenge? I mean, revenge is fine, right? I mean, that state revenge, whatever. But I want to know what you think and why you think that this is something that should be returned to Britain. And to go through a few of the stories where somebody might have been put to death, were it not for the fact we don't have the death penalty, like murderers and rapists and things like that, who were subsequently found to be not guilty. And it's not as rare as you think. It's not that rare. I don't kind of trust our justice system well enough, to be honest with you. But anyway, that's what I want to talk to you about at midnight. So do give me a call. 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at national rate, but we do call you back. And you can text the word talk and your message to 87222. So give me a call on that. That's at midnight, as usual, with the phone in. Now, before that, let me just have my rundown here. Tell me exactly what's going on, because I can't remember. Before that, we obviously have the paper review. We've got Amy Fisher coming in to do that. We have Bobby Carlton, who's our tech journalist in Saratoga Springs, and Lottie Hume, senior reporter at The Sun, talking us through some entertainment news as well. So lots to pack in the next 3 hours. But before that, not a day goes by without a headline linked to a knife crime, as an average of 4 people are killed or stabbed every week. But the number of under 18s arrested for knife offences has fallen by 33%, and not because young people have stopped carrying blades. According to Commander Hayley Stewart, who leads on tackling knife crime in the Met, a fall in arrests in London is linked to police officers lacking the confidence to use their powers and fearing complaints. Well, the reason we're talking about this evening, because it's all over the papers, and Idris Elba, the actor, has aired a story that he's done a documentary talking about knife crime. He's taken this as his thing, and how to stop it. He's exploring why it's rising and how to stop it. So we decided to get Sue Scott-Horn, who's a founder of the Let's Get Talking charity, runs various anti-knife crime programmes in London, to join us. A very good evening to you, Sue. Thank you so much for joining me.
Hello, Petrie.
First of all, the numbers, they feel like they're rising exponentially, but they are actually reasonably stable at the moment, aren't they? Particularly in the capital city. Not that that's a good thing, but so as we don't add more fear than is necessary.
Yeah, we don't want to frighten people too much, but there are actually 4 stabbings a week, mostly, at the moment. You know, it is dangerous out there, and it is going on. It's pretty prevalent, and we can't pretend it isn't. You know, we've got lots of things going on, with operations going on pavements, trying to save young people's lives. And in over 20 years now, we haven't actually stopped knife crime.
What is the fundamental issue with knife crime? Because looking at the figures and looking at the age groups, and they appear to be getting younger, and in fact we don't even need to look at the figures, we can look at the stabbings we've seen recently of 14-year-olds and 13-year-olds on the streets of London, on buses or on the street. You know, they seem to be getting younger and younger.
I think they are, without a doubt. 5 years ago at our charity, a headmistress phoned, and she said she was really panicking on the phone. She said, please, can you help me? I mean, she was alarmed. One of the teachers had found a boy of 9 in the playground with a knife. Now, this is probably because he's got older siblings running around with knives. He's hearing the language of knives and everything. At that time, I was only working with 11, years 5 and 6 in schools, up to 20 plus. That alarmed me. I assured her, yes, I can help you. Straight away, we did a primary anti-knife crime safety program. It wasn't a hit between the eyes program like I would use with, you know, teenagers who are using or carrying, but we worked a lot on safety. 9 years old, we now work from 8 years old. We do whole school assemblies, and we work with whole school assemblies from 8 to 11 years, mostly on safety. And then in secondary, we go into hit between the eyes, because this is where we also need to work hard to make young people understand the consequences of their choices. You see, they make their decisions so quickly because they're children, really. Their brains are still young. They're going through adolescence. They're going through lots of hormone changes. They're going through school changes. They're going through parental, maybe, traumas at home. You know, there could be drug traumas, there could be crime-ridden traumas, anything like that. So we really work from 8 to 20 plus now, in schools, in youth projects, in PRUs, where young people have been sent because of their bad behaviour, and they could be excluded or they could be suspended, which I actually don't agree with. I think schools should have units in them, because chucking them out, what do you chuck them to? You know, who's actually working with these young people in a proper way? They probably end up lonely in their bedroom with a lot of peer pressure, a lot of social media pressure that's going on, and then they'll probably end up joining a gang because there's nothing else on offer for them. And that's down to funding. You know, I
mean, when we look at the people who carry knives, is it as simple as saying these are poor, underprivileged children in rough areas? Is it as simple as that? And on the streets of London, that may be poor black boys who are living in rough, economically lower areas, or is it more nuanced than that? I mean, I noticed since 2017, white people in their 30s have made up the majority of offenders that have been sentenced for having an article with a blade. But when we tend to talk about this, and sadly, when we see the images of the people who were killed, it is normally a young black boy that you see that has had his life taken away, and the perpetrator of it similarly can be described in that way. But is it as simple as that?
You've got to remember, Petrie, it's not just the perpetrator. The victim can be a perpetrator.
Right.
The victim could be a carrier. You know, we say perpetrator victim, it works the other way round sometimes. And remember, in all these years, yes, it is poor child, because some of these children, especially some of the ones we've worked with, have had traumatised lives. There's childhood, you know, adverse effects that they've been through when they're young. They don't know any different to what they've grown up in. And unfortunately, as they grow up, not much changes for them until they get into school and get into a bit older, into teenage years. And that's where I think we need collaboration with teachers, government, parents, everybody, to say, like this woman today with Ronan, her son just walking home from school, and that's a lot of the time when it happens, walking home from school, and he got stabbed and died. And she said he wasn't in a gang, he wasn't in this, he wasn't in that. But the young people running after him, few minutes away from his door, didn't care about that. They were out to kill that boy. And it's the same with Kellyanne, and everyone else that's happened in the last 2 weeks and the last year. It's young people who have got traumatized lives. And now it's become peer pressure in a gang for young people to get their respect, carry a knife. It protects you. It does not. It does not protect you.
But why is there such an attitude that human life is so irrelevant, that it doesn't matter? They just go and kill that boy to prove yourself, a strong gang member. Why do they go, okay? Because it's a person they're killing, but they have no connection to that. They don't feel any empathy for that.
No emotion. There's no emotion because they themselves have been through so much trauma that they have no respect for their own life. They don't care about going to Feltham prison. They don't care about going into prison time and time again because nobody's really given them confidence or self-esteem that they can be something or someone.
But again, people might be listening to this, Sue, and going, no, they're just scumbags, right? I mean, because they're just scumbags. We're giving them excuses. We're saying, like the Southport killer, for example, well, his parents should have known. He had all that stuff under his bed. He was just a murderous scumbag. And presumably there are people who are just horrible people.
Absolutely. And where were those parents? That's what I said. Irresponsible parenting. Where were the parents, and where are all the parents who are supposed to be parenting, and their kids are taking knives out of the drawers? Where are the parents asking, where are you? What are you doing? Why is that knife missing? They're not vigilant enough, I'm afraid, to be watching and taking care of their own children. When they can't take care, unfortunately, our services are not stepping in quick enough. Now, there was plenty of time to prevent what happened with the Southport. You know that, and I know that, and the whole world is talking about that at the moment. What happened? I can go on and on about story after story after story. Baby P, this one, that one. What is happening? Why aren't we alerting to what is going on in our world, especially in the UK?
But what do you think of the response by government to make it more difficult to buy a knife on Amazon? I mean, it feels to me like that is not even the minimum they could be doing, because if you can't get a knife, Idris Elba saying not all kitchens knives need to have a sharp point on them. They would, and I was just saying earlier, well then they'll just use a screwdriver or a broken piece of glass, or it's not about the knife here. Why does it always keep coming back to, oh, we've got an amnesty on knives, or we've said this knife is banned, or we've said that knife? It's stopping knives is not and can't be the answer, because you can't stop them.
No. That is not the full answer. It's some of the answer, because ninja swords are still not banned. I mean, there's lots of things still not banned they can get hold of. And I really do think we must go down the education route. Why do you think we've got this charity and we do this work with our own programmes on anti-knife crime? Let's get educating these young people, because they don't realise the consequences of their actions. Young people move fast. They make decisions fast. You know, they're probably got under so much peer pressure that they have to do something to get the respect of whoever. It just seems to me that education is a key part. Government shut all the youth service clubs down, all the youth centres in Islington. When I was there as a deputy head of PSHE, they shut them all down. We campaigned. We knew because we were frontline staff, we knew what would happen. Chucking those kids on those streets, they're too young to manoeuvre themselves and decide what to do.
And it has been proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that where there is a supportive youth centre where homework can be done, where there are people there who can help them, the crime rate drops to almost zero. I mean, it isn't. It's really not complicated, in my view. The other thing, and I talk about this quite a lot on this programme, Sue, is that the social contract has broken down a bit as well between generations, that there's a lot of hopelessness in the younger generation. The idea they could ever have their own home, they could ever afford their own family, they could ever get a decent job, they could, you know, all of those things that you and I, when we were younger, took not for granted, but we knew that it was possible. There was hope, there was possibility of changing the world that we lived in. We trusted that we could manoeuvre against governments if we needed to. Young people don't have that sense of a future, maybe.
Well, some young people do, Petrie. Some young people do. It's not all young people, but a lot of young people have lost hope. And that is why, with no hope, they turn to crime. They turn to have bad behaviour. You know, teachers were quicker seeing bad behaviour in the schools and alert and go, no, something's up, something's going on. That is why I spent 3 years writing these knife crime card sets. Now, teachers, these are supervised card sets that go out. I've sold them all over 4 nations over the UK. They are card sets, and I'd like every school, every youth club to have these, because this is a way of talking to young people about knife crime, because a lot of them cannot make proper conversation now. It's text talk, it's screen talk. You know, the phones are under their pillows. They're losing sleep all night. Then they can't learn anyway of a day. So these cards are actually, the black and white ones are all for the staff. There's one question: why do young people carry knives? And then we have 25 cards that young people choose from to say whatever. They do not realise the knife can turn back on them, causing death because of peer pressure. Now, this is education, making young people realise. Some young people go, there's a card in here that says the law lets you do it. They actually think the law lets you do it. That is how far down the line we are.
Yeah. So you've definitely got your work cut out for you, but we all hope you succeed. Thank you so much for joining me. Sue Scott Horn there, founder of Let's Get Talking charity, and runs various anti-knife crime programmes in London. Right, I've got to take a quick break, but I will be back in just a moment.
the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good evening to you. This is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And as I said, coming up at midnight, it is the phone in as ever, and it is a full hour dedicated to your voices. It's a full hour where it is just you and me talking. And what I want to hear about today is this survey that's been out. And I know that it's talked about here on the station. That's why I want to give you the chance to talk back about this. Most Britons want to bring the death penalty back, according to this poll. The public support for capital punishment has surged to 55%, fueled by the sentencing of the Southport attacker Axel Rudakabana. A majority of the public think the UK should bring back the death penalty, with the strongest support amongst millennials. Now, those are people born, because I never know. We talk about Gen Z, Gen X, I don't know who they are, the boomers. But anyway, they are those born between early 1980s and the mid-1990s, and they make up the biggest proportion of population in Britain. Well, the survey was carried out by the public opinion think tank More in Common, found a considerable increase in support for the death penalty since its last poll on the subject in autumn 23. Now, that will be, won't it, because of the Southport murderer, and that people are just going, well, you know, of course he should be put to death. And look, that, you know, there's a lot of people that would agree with that. It was irrefutable. He actually admitted it. He pled guilty to it. But it's not as simple as people think it is. You look at death row in the United States, just think of the legal costs alone of like, so a judge says, right, for what you did, we're putting you to death. It doesn't happen the following week. It doesn't happen like it used to with the hangings. You know, this takes years. This will take years, and legal fights and battles and all of that. And all the time he's getting all the attention that he wants. You know, to fight the state putting him to death. It would take a long time, and it would cost an absolute fortune. But hey, he would at least be dead at the end of it, or not, depending on whether the lawyers managed to fight his cause or not. When you look at the United States, there are so many miscarriages of justice that I don't know whether our justice system is good enough, is robust enough. We know that poor people tend to have less favourable outcomes for crimes than rich people. So, you know, if a rich person were to murder somebody and get away with it because they were rich, then you've definitely got a two-tiered, well, we've already got a 2 or even 3-tier justice system. So even if there's what you would term irrefutable proof, people believe that DNA is infallible. It isn't. You know, when DNA is found on a person or in a place, the police work backwards from that. And often the temptation is to make the DNA fit the evidence. Of course it is. Why bother looking for somebody else when you've got DNA on the scene? And we've had miscarriages of justice where we've been told there's irrefutable proof that these people carried out these heinous crimes, and indeed they didn't, because later on more evidence has come forward, or you know, there's been something else that's turned up, or an eyewitness. I don't know if I trust the system enough to bring back the death penalty. And look, I get it. You know, people, whenever I've mentioned this in the past, people said, well, you know, if somebody killed your, God, I can't even say the words. If somebody hurt my boy, would I want them dead? Absolutely I would. Absolutely I would. I'd do it myself. I'd pull the lever, I'd pull the trigger, I'd do it all myself. That's called revenge. And rightly, of course I'd want them dead. Absolutely. No question. We all would. I'm not being hypocritical about this. But that isn't the law. That isn't justice, as much as I might see it as justice. You know, we're supposed to be a reasonably civilised country, and we don't, you know, behead people or burn gay men in cages or, you know, all the other horrendous things that other cultures will do. So do we want to be like them? Do we want to be civilised? And even, is it civilised to keep these monsters alive? I don't know. I mean, look, it's not easy. It's not as easy as just saying, yeah, kill them. It isn't. So what is the answer? Do you support? Are you one of this? I mean, it's a huge number, 58%. 55 to 50. I mean, the numbers are extraordinary, and they're going up. So do we want the return of the death penalty? Would you be satisfied that this country was robust enough to actually be safe enough to do this? Give me a call. 0344 499 1000, and you can text the word talk and your message to 87222.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, good evening to you. This is Talk, and it's Petrie here until 1 o'clock. And it's time to turn our attention now to something a little lighter, and that is entertainment news with the fabulous Lottie Hume, senior reporter at The Sun. Lottie.
Hello. How are you?
I hear congratulations are in order.
Oh, thank you, Petrie. Yes.
I'm so thrilled for you. You went to New York. Did you see it coming? Did you know it was going to happen?
Do you know what? I want to say no, but I did. I really, you know, they act differently. And he lost his wallet various times that day, was quite jittery, and I thought something's not quite right here. But the actual moment took me by surprise, so that was good.
Lovely. Show us the ring. So Lottie got engaged in New York.
There you go, a little pink number.
Oh, very nice.
There's the bling.
Oh, it's very nice.
I keep thinking I'm going to lose it. I'm just staring at it constantly. But
Oh, well, good for him, and congratulations to him for picking such a wonderful person to get married to.
I'll let him know.
Let him know. He's done a good job. Right, let's have a look at Princess Beatrice, because she's also done a good job today. She's given birth.
She's done a great job. So Princess Beatrice has given birth to her second child with husband Edoardo Mapelli Mozzi. I'm hoping I've said that correctly. So their baby daughter Athena is the name that they've chosen. She was actually born several weeks prematurely and is said to be doing really healthily and well, which is good. But she weighed in at 4 pounds and 5 ounces.
Wow.
But in a nod to the late Queen, her middle name's actually Elizabeth, which is nice. So full name Athena Elizabeth Rose Mapelli Mozzi. So the couple today released a lovely photo of their tiny little newborn, they called her. She was wrapped in a pink blanket. She was born at Chelsea and Westminster Hospital at 1 p.m, just before 1 p.m. on January the 22nd, so last Wednesday. And they announced the birth on social media saying, Athena Elizabeth Rose Mapelli Mozzi, we welcomed her into our lives last week. She's tiny, absolutely perfect. And we are all, including Wolfie and Sienna, already completely besotted with her because, of course, they've got little Sienna as well. I think she's 3. And then Eduardo has Wolfie from a previous relationship. But yeah, she's doing really well, which is great news.
Oh, that is good. That 4.5 pounds is tiny. Mine was born
I know.
at 5 pounds, and I thought he was little. So yeah, that is tiny, but he was healthy as well.
That's good.
Good for them. It's always nice, and even Prince Andrew seemed to have something to smile about today. So that must have been
Exactly.
That must be why he's been smiling for the last few, because he's not got much to smile about.
Doesn't he? He really doesn't. No.
The Fire Aid Festival tomorrow. I suppose this is a reaction that we do now, isn't it? Or certainly famous people do. They feel they've got to do something to help with a situation, so they put on a concert and raise money that way.
Yeah, so this is happening tomorrow. I still can't believe those fires. I mean, what a start to the year. It was horrible. But we've got some huge names taking part in this concert, the Fire Aid concert. So loads of big names in music are joining forces, and it's dedicated obviously to raise money for the Los Angeles communities that, have obviously been devastated by these wildfires. So it's taking place tomorrow, Thursday, the 30th, over in the States. There are going to be 2 concerts. The first will be at LA's Kia Forum. The following one will be at the Intuit Dome. But the time difference means for us in the UK, it will be around 2 a.m. and then 3:30 a.m. respectively on Friday. So we've got some massive names. I'll read some out for you. So there's 27 acts that have been named so far. The first event will see the likes of Alanis Morissette, Green Day, Red Hot Chili Peppers. We've got Stephen Stills, Joni Mitchell. So some massive names, Pink. And then later on that evening, we'll have Billie Eilish, Lady Gaga, Rod Stewart, Little Baby, Stevie Wonder, Gracie Abrams, Tate McRae, Earth, Wind and Fire. So, it's really drawn in some massive names. So I think a lot of people will be watching, and the organisers have said that all the money that they raise from Fire Aid will be distributed to all the short-term relief efforts, long-term initiatives to kind of prevent the future fire disasters throughout Southern California. So, they're making a good thing out of something that was obviously really, really bad that happened.
And how do they plan to make the money? Is it from ticket sales for people going in, or is it sales from the television rights, or both?
So, ticket sales, so tickets to the concerts, to the live concerts, they're on sale on Ticketmaster for $99, but all venue and ticketing services, I believe, are waived, and then 100% of those proceeds are going to go to the Fire Aid relief efforts. So they're going to make the money through that, I think, from what I know.
Brilliant. Well, good for them. Love Island winner on bail after jail sentence over dog attack. I think this passed me by, this story.
Yeah, so this was kind of the story of today that broke around lunchtime. Love Island winner Jack Fincham, he was on it back in 2018. He won alongside Danny Dyer, but he's been taken to court today over his hulking dog. It's a cane corso. I don't know if you're familiar with that breed.
Yeah, they've got the little clipped ears. Yeah, they're terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah, so he kind of came under a lot of fire for a picture he shared once of the clipped ears anyway. But today he was jailed for 6 weeks. He admitted being in charge of a dangerously kind of out of control dog, but it's understood now he's been freed on bail while he appeals that sentence. So obviously the courts can grant bail ahead of a appeal in exceptional circumstances. But his lawyer has kind of said, we're disappointed that the magistrates didn't find it would be unjust to activate the suspended sentence order. However, the case remains finely poised. We're optimistic that in the fullness of time, the Crown Court will uphold Mr. Fincham's appeal. So his girlfriend was there. She was kind of seen in tears as he was taken down. He gave a thumbs up, but now obviously he's been granted bail. So what's happened is his dog, who's named Elvis, attacked a runner. This was back in September 2022, but then later he mauled an unnamed woman in Essex. This was in 2024. So, you know, he was subjected to a suspended sentence at the time, but the judge said the order would be activated, adding, "We've got no reason not to do so." So he's also been ordered to pay £3,680. £200 of that will be a compensation fee to Robert, who the dog attacked, and a £50 compensation fee to the victim. So he'll pay that by a payment plan. But Jack was told that he needed to do various things. So that was keep the dog on a lead. The dog had to wear a muzzle, and it wasn't to be left alone with anyone under the age of 16. So obviously, from what I know, this hasn't happened. So that's why he's been kind of hauled into court today. And
the tragedy is, of course, it'll be the dog that pays by being put down, and that it's so unfair. But then if you can't control it, then
I know that.
It's just disgusting, really.
Yeah, it's devastating.
Talking of disgusting, Wyn Evans, the Go Compare man, it's just getting worse and worse for him, and I think he deserves it.
It's honestly, Petria, it's just bad luck after bad luck. I mean,
he brought it upon himself, didn't he?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, obviously, he's had a tough time with his brother dying, but now he's also broken up with his girlfriend. This follows, he broke his silence after he was axed from the Strictly Live tour. He's obviously facing a lot of backlash after this cruel sexual comment he's made about Janette Manrara. She is one of the pro dancers on Strictly. But it's since been revealed that he's now split with girlfriend Liz Brooks. So this is just, going and going and going. He started dating her in the spring of last year, and this was after his 16-year marriage kind of ended. So obviously he's been plunged into scandal during Strictly. Obviously, you might remind, I know that you don't watch Strictly, but obviously we saw him kind of sliding his hands across Catchy Jones, her stomach, and then obviously there was this new gaffe that he's made at the Strictly Live tour. So someone said, although his girlfriend loyally stood by him in public, she was humiliated by what had happened on Strictly. She always knew he was a bit old school, liked the fact he seemed rough around the edges, but she just assumed it was part of his charm. But Wyn seemed to kind of develop a particularly close relationship with Katja, and seems to have gotten carried away with, with many suspected contributor to Gropegate, is what it's been called, happening. So this is all quotes that the Sun have been given today. But what we do know is that, insiders have said that his Strictly co-stars have all gathered around him, and kind of they're all there with him because he's back at his home in Wales now. So close friends are keeping an eye on him, and BBC have put him in touch with a welfare officer as well. But it's just kind of that story.
But I mean, if my boyfriend had said what he said, and was, I mean, even if he wasn't a public figure, that'd be him dumped. I mean, that is disgusting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, and we can't speak on air, but it was absolutely disgusting.
It really was. And a lot of people have said to me, I can't find it anywhere. I said, well, because it was gross. I think it's been redacted in some newspapers to give you an idea of what he said. But it's just like, if your boyfriend said that, you'd be like, what is wrong with you?
You'd be shocked, but also in a very public forum,
in front of journalists.
In front of, exactly. Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
arrogant and pathetic. That's what he is. He's brought all that on himself. He wasn't forced into saying that or behaving in the way he's been behaved. It's his own fault. Renee and Hugh reunite for Bridget Jones' premiere.
Yes, tonight they were back on that red carpet, so we've just had the premiere. I wasn't there, sadly. I didn't get an invite. However, what
rude.
I do know is, I know, but they looked like, so Renee Zellweger and Hugh Grant, obviously two iconic characters of Bridget Jones, and we've got Bridget Jones coming back. Will you be tuning in? Because the movie's coming back soon.
I loved the first one, and then just thought, well, that was the book, because I read the book in the old days, when people read books, and it was very clever at the time. It was really, something very fresh and new. Loved the first film. I'm not sure I can be bothered. I'm not sure I love her that much.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's one of those where, obviously, so basically, for a bit of context, we've got Bridget Jones About the Boy coming back on Valentine's Day. So we've seen Hugh Grant and Renee get together on the red carpet, posing for photos. They're in Paris on Monday. Now they've been in London today, looking glam. But, I was thinking about this. When and I'm really excited about it, don't get me wrong, but when does it end? Do you know what I mean? Because this movie's going to see her kind of fall for a younger boy. I think that's the plot twist. Obviously, Colin Firth's character is sadly no longer in it, Mark Darcy. Rest in peace, Mark Darcy. But it's one of those, I don't really know what to expect from it, because I feel like the first two were so iconic, weren't they?
Yeah, and now, yeah, I mean, it'll be next will be Bridget Jones and the winter fuel allowance, won't it? I mean, I don't
Actually,
know.
that's brilliant.
I don't know how much further they can go with her.
I need to pitch that as an idea. If I ever meet the director.
Pitch it. We'll share the profits. It'll be absolutely brilliant. Lottie, it's wonderful to talk to you. Congratulations
You too.
again. I'm absolutely thrilled for you. Lottie Hume, senior reporter at The Sun. Quick break. Back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there. Good to have your company. It is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And just to let you know, just to remind you that coming up at the top of the hour is the paper review, and Amy Fisher, former Director of Communications at the Conservative Party, will be here. It'll be really interesting to hear what she says about the way the way the current Labour Party is actually communicating with the public. So we're chatting to her about that, and the front pages, of course, for tomorrow. But in the meantime, it is time to head off to Saratoga Springs, New York, to our tech journalist, Bobby Carlton. Bobby, lovely to see you. Wow, a day is a long time, not just in politics, but in tech.
Some crazy thing. Well, first off, Petrie, thank you for having me back on the show. But yes, there's a lot going on in technology at the moment. Everyone's talking about AI. Everyone's talking about DeepSeek AI. But like the music industry, here today, gone today. DeepSeek, which was sort of being touted as like the next big powerful AI tool, has a new competitor, and Alibaba Group just released a new AI model called Qwen 2.5. And apparently, according to Alibaba Group, which is through their AI division, this model outperforms DeepSeek quite a bit in everything from like understanding code, understanding benchmarks, the superior performance in areas like complex reasoning. And this is supposedly it's blowing away DeepSeek. I know everyone's talking about DeepSeek, but Alibaba has done quite a bit in the tech space, is introducing this model, and it's definitely a game changer.
It's interesting to me, it always is with these big companies, is to the timing of the release of Qwen 2.5. So soon after DeepSeek was, this amazing kind of Sputnik moment, as we were told. And everybody, the market's dropped. We've seen a bit of a climb back, but not to the level it dropped. We've seen hundreds of billions wiped off companies in Silicon Valley. Why would you release Qwen now? It just seems to me to be an odd decision.
I think it's a race. I think just organizations and companies really just want to be ahead in this race. I think it's growing so fast, evolving so fast that they're just throwing them out there, throwing the solutions out there, throwing the tools out there. And as the adoption of AI tools really ramps up, Alibaba is looking at this as a big opportunity. And I know there's been a lot of conversation on DeepSeek. I know you talked about it the other day, but I would expect even OpenAI and other tools to jump into the fray. Meta, has their Llama 3. So again, AI tools is growing, and I think everyone just wants to be in front of that race.
But again, another question is, why do we need so many? I mean, is this all that AI can do? Because, with this big revolution in AI, and all it is these bots that help you find an essay that was written by a professor 20 years ago.
I think it's just like anything else, like smartphones. Like, how many smartphones do we need? How many types of computers do we need? I just think that.
But the market in those areas is shrinking because because people have decided, actually, we only need 2 or 3 of the big ones. The rest of them are all fading. So there's a lot of these out there now. I just wonder if the race is worth it.
I think depending on the tool, again, we'll talk specifically about like Llama 3, Facebook's or Meta's AI. I mean, that's going to be specifically for Facebook content, Instagram content, how Meta wants to use that, and so there's definitely very specific markets that each of these tools will be aimed towards. But and in this case, I think with Qwen 2.5, I think that's being looked at as an overall tool that could be used in any industry, whether it's aerospace, automotive, whether it's in writing code, problem solving, education, running a company, even doing things as automating your day-to-day life. And that's, I think, where the race is. I think there's definitely, and that's where I think DeepSeek and Qwen 2.5 are going to really, have that battle, that AI battle.
Yeah, I mean, again, when you look at the fight, the young people won't get this reference, between VHS and Betamax, right?
There you go.
In the end, VHS won, but not for very long. And now they've both gone. So I just wonder again if we're going to see this sort of race with this type of AI, and then none of them, they're all going to be obsolete when something new comes along.
Very possible. I think, again, you talk about VHS and Beta. Beta was a better format than VHS.
Yeah, apparently so, yeah.
Yeah. So it really, it's just who's at the market first and who.
Yeah. Right, let's have a look at X, formerly known properly as Twitter. I wouldn't trust X with any of my money. What the hell?
No. X, it's interesting. Elon Musk, saw a mass exodus of users from X heading over to Blue Sky and other platforms. And so X
particularly really after the Roman salute, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he is definitely a lot of people who at once admired him have moved away, myself included. But obviously, with his Roman salute, he's probably gained some other type of followers as well.
Yeah,
but
true. Yeah.
He is trying to position X as a platform, not just for social media, but as a financial tool. He is actually moving it. He's partnered with Visa to basically give you the ability to do transactions through X, to basically being a digital wallet, send funds to friends, make purchases, check your own finances using AI to even give you advice on how to approach something such as a loan or anything like that. And X has that ability to do that, as well as other social media tools. But X is the first to really partner with is directly with a financial institution to provide those services.
Yeah, no thanks.
No fights.
No, thank you. What about Apple and Starlink? Apple now working with SpaceX. That was only a matter of time, wasn't it?
It was, again, this is another one of those things where there's a lot of conversation of what's happening with technology companies. And of course, this new current administration here in the United States and Elon Musk being a big part of that as well. And of course, Starlink, which is owned by Musk, and SpaceX, they are combining with Apple. So Apple's going to be able to use Starlink to allow you to access their satellites to send text messages, voice memos, anything like that. And eventually, you're going to be able to use Starlink to make phone calls when you're in a situation where you don't have a signal. And that's something to keep in mind. Apple already has this ability to access satellite information to do text messages, but now they have this new partnership with Starlink, tying both these two giant companies together into a platform where it's only going to be on T-Mobile at the moment, but it is coming over to other platforms, so AT&T or anything like that. Even the sort of the smaller platforms like Cricket, anything like that, will get this. As long as you're using an Apple phone, you'll be able to access Starlink if you don't have a signal.
Yeah, this is the other thing that concerns me a little bit, and that is that when you've got a tech giant like Musk, who we must point out isn't the brains that makes these things. He's just the man that facilitates other people to make it and then claims responsibility for it. But anyway, if his brand becomes more and more toxic as he supports the AfD, a far-right Nazi party in Germany, is he too big to fail now? Because Apple are not going to. You would imagine them going, I'm not sure I want to be anywhere near that at the moment. At what point will companies stop dealing with him, or is he so big and so powerful that no one will ever stop dealing with him, like with China? Doesn't matter what they do with their human rights, we're still going to deal with them. Is Musk the new China?
Very much so. I think so.
See, that's terrifying to me. That is too much power.
Too much power. And I think a company like Apple to partner with someone like Elon Musk and SpaceX and Starlink, I think that was an incredibly dangerous thing to do.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, Apple itself has a lot of different platforms, and they're doing a lot of work in the tech space. And we're seeing all these tech giants really come together. And that's, again, I think a dangerous mix, as you brought up. And I do think that we're at this point where we can protest all we want. We can protest against Amazon for and Apple and Google. Yeah. Again, all these companies.
But they control everything, right? So if you've got an Apple phone and you don't approve of them linking up with SpaceX, then you go to another phone which is owned by Facebook or Google, there's nowhere to go, and how do we? There's no protest. They're too powerful, especially when they link together like this. It is what we have to go back to the dark ages to not be associated with a brand that we don't support.
I think we are in a situation, Petrie, where corporations have more power than governments.
Yeah, I agree, particularly in America.
Particularly in America, and I think it's incredibly dangerous that we're seeing these partnerships, because you're right. I can't just dump my phone off, right? I need my phone. I need to work. I use it to communicate with individuals, and I can't switch. It doesn't matter if I switch from an Apple device to an Android device, right? I mean, they're both, again, people like to protest and say, I'm not buying an item because they supported such and such candidate. And that's easy. Like with
Coca-Cola, for example, people are saying, right, I'm not going to buy Coca-Cola.
I'm going to go buy Pepsi, or I'm going to buy something.
Yeah.
But with technology, we're so tied into technology in our work, in our day-to-day, that it's hard to protest in those situations. Yeah. And the thing, those tech companies know that. They absolutely know that they have us. And to walk away means we'd have to literally go back to
I said, to not having a phone. And that really is terrifying to me, that there is so much power in the hands of so few people. And it's not just the money, it's the power that they have over controlling our lives. Bill Gates, Microsoft, all of those companies now have this ultimate power over our lives. No, it's always interesting to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Lovely
Petrie.
to see you. Hopefully I'll see you very soon. Bobby Carlton there, tech journalist in Saratoga Springs, New York. Right, stay right where you are. Put your phones down. And with me in just a few moments' time is Amy Fisher, former Director of Communications of the Conservative Party, to go through the papers.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good evening to you, or hello to you. It's good to have your company. With me in the studio, Amy Fisher, former Director of Communications at the Conservative Party. Those days are gone now. You're free.
Oh, somewhat, thank goodness.
Right now, yeah, thank goodness. Amy, just before we start looking at the front pages for Thursday, I've been looking at this story. Public support for capital punishment has surged to 55%, fueled by sentencing of the Southport attacker Axel Rudakabana. A majority of the public think the UK should bring back the death penalty, with the strongest support amongst millennials, so those born between the 1980s and mid-90s, early 80s and mid-90s. Now, this is the highest level this support has been.
For a long time.
For a very long time. Yeah. Why are we seeing this, do you think?
So I think in reference to that particular case, the Southport killer who, stabbed the little girls who were a Taylor Swift dance bracelet making party. I mean, when I read what his sentence was, I sort of, I've worked in the Ministry of Justice and the Home Office and all the rest of it, and I sort of gave a double take at what his sentence was, and I was very surprised it wasn't a whole life tariff.
And then couldn't be because he was 17.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I then had to sort of double check and think, well, goodness me, it was 50 odd years, but why is it not the whole life tariff? Then I read, you can't give that to somebody who's not over the age of 18. But I think the sheer horror of that particular case has put this issue right there. It's probably not something that maybe even a lot of the millennials particularly think about, actually, but so awful was that case when somebody's done something so horrific, so entirely without justification. It's made a lot of people, particularly maybe in that age group, who've not had to think about it before, because certainly the capital punishment is not something that ever would have happened in their lifetime, or even their parents' lifetime, or even, dare I say it, their grandparents' lifetime. So I think that's maybe why some of those statistics came out in that latest survey that you were talking about. I mean, capital punishment in this country was sort of last person was, I think, in the 60s.
Ruth Ellis,
I think
she was the last. Well, she's certainly the last woman
late
to be
60s,
hanged.
I think.
It was.
So as I say, millennials wouldn't even have grandparents necessarily that had any conception of what capital punishment actually was, and the sheer horror of that killing and the little girls in Southport.
And actually, when you look back at that time, some of the people who were hanged, when we look at it, we go, well, they really shouldn't have been.
There were a couple of miscarriages.
Miscarriages of justice,
yeah.
And it's too late, right? Yeah. Then you can't go, oh, soza. It's done. Somebody is dead. I mean, again, with Ruda Cubana, I mean, he pled guilty too, right? So there was no question of
which people were somewhat surprised by.
Really surprised by. Yeah, because we all thought that he wanted his moment in the sun, not the paper. I mean, in the glorying in the horrors of what he had done. But when I saw the sentence, I mean, I gasped that I thought it was because I'd already was aware that he couldn't be given a whole life tariff. I was like, wow, that is a big sentence. And in fact, it's the biggest sentence that a teenager has ever been given. And when you think about it, that's 52 years before parole. That doesn't mean, I don't think he'll live that long. I mean, but even if he does, he'll be 70 years old. Okay, you can never bring back those little girls, but there would never be a fair punishment. I don't think death is a fair punishment either for what he did. But the judge did as much as he could
within the sentencing
guidelines, and he really pushed that limit, Mr. Justice Goose. He really did go, right, I'm not messing around here. This is what you're getting. But a lot of people said it wasn't long enough.
Well, this is, I think, where we've dive straight into the whole sort of wider question of when justice is served, justice should always be served fairly, right? I think we can all agree on that as a principle. It then is justice about retribution, punishment, any hope of rehabilitation.
In this country, it's revenge, isn't it?
Is it revenge? In this country, we have for some years, again going back to my time in the Ministry of Justice, we do have restorative justice schemes, whereby with agreements from both sides, both an offender and the victim or the people affected, they can meet under certain schemes, and through talking, both or either side can find, as I say, the schemes are called rehabilitative justice. That can be helpful in some cases.
So a lot of people see that as a soft touch, don't they? It's soft touch. This creature went and stabbed 3 little girls. He would have killed them all if he could.
Severely wounded 9. The teachers and
and the trauma that the survivors have got to live through for the rest of their lives, and he's in a prison cell. People imagine playing PlayStation and getting 3 square meals a day, and having his rent paid for him, and a lot of people will see that as not being punished. Yeah.
Exactly, and as I say, it goes straight back to what we conceive the justice system for, what we conceive prisoners being. It was Dostoevsky in Crime and Punishment who said, we should judge a society by how it treats its prisoners. that's where consent is seen as being softer from the left, that where you sort of treat prisoners fairly or something benignly. Some people think that's too soft, and that's actually also partly why we don't have the death penalty in this country, because we don't sort of have an eye for an eye type system. We in Britain have chosen to go down a route of the belief in rehabilitation and not just cutting things off, not just least, as you've just said. You know, sometimes terrible mistakes, the wrong mistake, well, not the mistake can never be right, but you know, the wrong person does end up being punished. And if we're talking about capital punishment, that's a kind of final way for things to have been done. And so the horrible prospect of that happening to the wrong person is kind of the barrier why we in this country kind of go, no, we'll have everything. We can have harsh sentences and everything.
But that's
up
the
until
point I was going to make, and I was just, I wasn't ignoring it. I was just looking for a text that came in a little bit earlier, saying, look, the reason that people want the death sentence, I can't find it. No, anyway, I'll paraphrase it. The reason that people might want the death sentence is because we were lied to about what a life term is. That some sentences, and more often now, sentences are being referred back to justice for being unduly lenient. And I think a lot of us do look at some of the sentencing and go, what the heck was that judge thinking? What were they doing? And that's why Justice Goose did a really impressive job in talking about why he was delivering the sentences that he was delivering, the purpose behind it, the reason for it, and any mitigating circumstances or to the contrary of that. So, but one of these, my wonderful listeners saying, look, we don't believe them. You know, when they say we're going to be tough on crime, people getting 6 years out in 3, that's exactly so wrong.
It. I mean, there's actually two things in that. Firstly, sentencing, until you've ever had experience with it, either in policy terms or personal circumstances. I mean, sentencing is, as you've just described. When people say, oh, so-and-so got 6 years for X crime, 6 years doesn't mean 6 years in Wandsworth or Hideout. It means 3 years, and then you're automatically let out after half, and then the next 3 years, the other half of your 6 year sentence, is when you are paroled. So you can be recalled back if you break the terms of it. But
you're out.
But there's a huge misconception about 10 years being 10 years, or 6 years being. It's not at all. It's that's not the time that anyone serves behind bars, no longer doing a damage or to society, or hopefully indeed to themselves. So that's the first bit around sentencing, which, as I say, unless you've ever had a particular reason, either personally or professionally, to interact with sentencing and its guidelines, why would you understand that 6 years doesn't mean 6 years behind bars? And secondarily, the prison system and the court system in this country is creaking. So everyone always talks about the NHS, and rightly, by the way, the NHS is being so under strain and the biggest public service that we should worry about just not being. It's always a plaster over sort of gunshot wound type of effect of just trying to keep things from stopping and bursting at the seams. I would honestly say the courts and prison system is very much a hugely close second behind that. It's not even really just the overcrowding, which Labour sort of made their big rationale for letting prisoners out early, which they did within their first
earlier than early,
which they did within their first couple of months of being in power, which, by the way, they hadn't sort of really told anybody they were going to do in their manifesto, but let's leave that to one side. It's just the court system is, anybody who's, again, if you're interested in the court system, either sadly if you've been a victim or if you have another reason to interact with it, or if you're just interested in the way that the efficacy and the administration of justice in this country is done, is genuinely and frightening when you see it up close. It's genuinely crazy.
But that's the other problem, isn't it? I mean, look, this is just completely hypothetical. I don't think it'll ever happen. But don't say that because it depends on the government you get in, doesn't it? But look, that it does. It's not likely to happen. But is our justice system robust robust enough to be trusted with a death sentence. I mean, that is the other thing.
I'm going to have to say no.
I'm going to have
genuinely,
to say
just on instinct.
And you worked for the Justice Department.
And to be really clear, that's not because I was about to do a double negative, so let me put it more clearly. The people who work in the justice system, be it, as I say, at the courts or the prisons or any of the levels in between, there are people there who are fantastic and work incredibly hard.
Undoubtedly. And
take their jobs incredibly seriously and all the rest of it. But the system, the edifice overall as a whole, and the antiquated machinery of it, no, I wouldn't trust it with taking somebody's life.
No.
Because that's what we're talking about with capital punishment. And capital punishment is quite a sanitised word to put on. No, the state has chosen to kill somebody.
Yeah. Absolutely, and the other thing that I think also concerns me with the system that we have at the moment is it is already two-tier. I mean, like the American system, the richer you are, the less likely you are to get a proper sentence, even for murder. I mean, there's been some very famous cases in the US where they've subsequently been found to be guilty in a civil court, but because you can't be tried for the same crime twice.
I mean, O.J. Simpson,
yeah. But he was a rich man. If he'd been a poor black man, then I don't think it would have been an entirely different outcome. He might still be on death row, right? But he was a rich black man with a lot of, a lot of very wealthy.
I think if you're at that level of richness, there's sort of, at that point, the kind of colour of the skin, although that obviously can be a major factor in the US, I'm not denying that, but the scale of wealth that we're talking about there in the tunes of tens of, millions.
But we have a similar problem here in that, if you're rich in this country, then and you were accused of a murder, you can afford to get the best QC, you can afford to get the best team, you can afford to bring in experts that are specialists in DNA or whatever it is that was the main reason that you were found suspected of being guilty, and you're more likely to get off, at least not get the death penalty, whereas if it's a poorer person in this country, they're less likely to get off. So I wouldn't trust that.
But this is a huge discussion that you've started, because this is actually, another huge case that's still ongoing is the Lucy Letby case. Now we have a huge debate about how expert the expert witnesses are. I don't particularly want to go into the whole was she guilty or was she not. What I'm saying is she was found guilty, but now in terms of sort of appeals and various other deaths that the CPS was thinking about charging for, and David Davis, used to have an MP, former Shadow Home Secretary, has come out very strongly behind her, saying I just don't trust the expert witness evidence that was given. So, it's to your point of at any stage in the whole of the edifice of the criminal justice system, does it get skewed by money? When is the expert witness not the expert witness? Or how far can you trust it? And actually, back to the question you first asked, a couple of minutes ago, was would you trust the system in this country to be able to make the choice to take somebody's life? I know my answer is no. I just wouldn't trust it. However guilty I actually thought the person was, maybe instinctively or on the basis of the evidence that I was ever able to, as a citizen of this country, be able to view. I just don't trust the edifice of bureaucracy of criminal justice in this country to make the right decision when we are talking about the state taking somebody's life.
And I know that when I take calls on this later, people will say, well, DNA. If there's DNA there, then that. But it's not. It's not infallible, for a start. And also, what can tend to happen, and has happened actually in cases in the UK, where the police have found DNA and then sort of reverse engineered, not deliberately, but then reverse engineered the evidence, and it's turned out that person was had bumped into them earlier on in the day. So it's not that,
clear cut.
Well,
I was listening to a fantastic podcast the other day, actually. I sort of haven't particularly remember it, but DNA is obviously a wonderful scientific advance for many uses, not least in criminal forensics, investigation, prosecution, all the rest of it. But in the early, actually it was probably about the mid-2000s, the whole of Europe was getting very freaked out because the same person's DNA had been found at multiple crime scenes, very violent, murders, rapes, assaults, Germany, Belgium, Switzerland, France. And generally the whole of Europe was literally going, have we got some like the craziest sort of serial killer attacker person that we've ever seen, and how in some cases how is this person committing all these crimes? And then it turned out that there'd actually been a fault in the factory for the forensic swab testing kits that were being used. So where 5 or 6 European countries through Interpol all scratching their heads going, have we got the most horrific serial offender, serial rapist, serial killer that's ever been here? Because how is this person popping up all over the place? And it was because in the manufacturers, they say, of the swabs, somebody in the packing factory, it was their DNA getting into the swabs, which then weren't perfectly packed for forensic examination. And I mean, they have obviously eventually found it out because you know, as I say, Interpol all sat around and went, there is no possible way one person can be responsible for all of these crimes in all of these countries. So what is the common denominator we're looking at? Go back to the forensic testing swab kits. So,
but if that had been a couple of swabs that had been affected in that way, and that was backtracked to somebody,
entirely different results. So as I say, for all the brilliance, undeniable brilliance of these scientific advances, there can be within, you know, I appreciate that's maybe sort of 15, 20 years ago, but within recent enough memory to kind of think, well, actually science, as much as it can and should be relied on and is brilliant, it's not infallible. And if you're making choices based on that about possibly taking the state taking somebody's life, that's where I have the pause for thought.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, we've got to take a break. Amy Fisher and myself will be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, it is good to have your company, and I am in the company of Amy Fisher, former Director of Communications, the Conservative Party. And Amy, time to look at the papers and use your expertise on comms. Starmer really can't be trusted with our Brexit. Voters do not trust Keir Starmer on Brexit. A shock poll reveal. I'm not sure how shocking that poll is. This is the Daily Express. This Labour government seemed to be, we've said this before, really inept with its messaging.
Sorry, that was probably a little bit loud on some listeners' ears. No, inept is sort of the word, because I actually, it's going to be no surprise to anybody to know that, I'm not a Labour supporter. I'm a former director of communications and Conservative Party, but I sort of feel quite sorry for Starmer, because I don't believe that he's not trying to sort of do a good job, but he's just been a bit rubbish.
Yeah. But
So
we
he's
said
sort
before,
of-
his advisors, whoever they are, need sacking.
But he just sort of, but I'm not even sure. Is that he's looking at the front page of the Daily Express, which has Thursday's Daily Express, which says Starmer really can't be trusted with our Brexit. But I don't. Apart of the fact it is quite literally on the front page of Thursday's Daily Express, I don't think it's a particularly front page news. I mean, I don't think anybody is going to go, oh,
what a shock.
Keir Starmer sort of wants to rejoin the EU. I mean, I think anybody who, well, I just don't think that's a surprise to anybody, whether you voted for Brexit or you didn't, whether you voted for a Labour government run by Keir Starmer last July, or whether you didn't. I mean, I just think this front page is, you sort of look and go, oh, okay, no, I mean, he can't.
No, we can't trust
Sorry, I
him.
don't mean to sound reductionist,
No, but
that's
he was always
entirely my reaction to it.
It made no secret of the fact that he was, pro-Remain, and we've now got Rachel Reeves. I think was talking about joining. It's the customs
Making
union,
overtures,
basically.
yeah.
It's the customs union, the trade. She said a trade union or something, and I don't think that's a shock from this government. So I'm surprised actually at the words "a shock poll."
No,
revealed.
well, this is what I mean. And then, given again that this particular Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor's speech, Rachel Reeves' speech on Wednesday was sort of being billed as, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, about their third reset.
Yeah.
Which for a government that's been in place for, seven and a half months, like usually governments have resets 2, 3, sort of 4 years into, when they're sort of running out of steam and all the rest of it. I mean, to be having to have these kind of big speeches to almost reverse your own budget, by the way, which is the thing that got all the markets and businesses spooked about where growth was going, to then have a kind of reset speech to kind of reverse that 7 months into a new government, and to then have it still sort of hijacked by a shock poll on Brexit. I mean, yes, we have discussed that whoever it is who's advising Starmer, and once again, they must be sitting around a sort of, in Downing Street or a kitchen table, wherever they are, looking at some of the front pages there and going, oh, we didn't quite get this one right either, did we?
No, I mean, but I think the last time we spoke, he'd just done the big NHS reveal.
Exactly was, yes, a few weeks ago. Yeah,
and then not one front page.
I think it was the Independent actually.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
Talked about sort of private, the sort of maybe a greater role for private healthcare. And we both sort of looked at that and went, well, if that's the one headline you got about
That's
the
not the one you
NHS,
want.
that's not the one you wanted. But this front page of the Express is exactly the same. If you're making your Chancellor is making a big reset speech about how you're going to reboot, Britain and get growth going again, the headline you don't want is people talking about Brexit again.
Yeah.
I mean, it's literally anti-strategic, government comms, anti-bingo. Just honestly.
What would you have done if you'd been in charge and that's what you got?
Well, someone flippantly said this about the NHS, I'd be crying. I mean, look, okay, we can. What they will probably be going is, we'll look at the Express. We're not going to get too worried about it because it's the Express. It's obviously not a pro-Labour, pro-Starmer, pro-Brexit paper. So we just have to live with it.
Yeah, I'm just flicking through the paper. No surprise that the Mirror is the one that has talked about it. I suppose the Mail as well, but no, they haven't. They're not talking about the growth. Right, let's move on now from the Express and look at. Let's go to the Times. Again, nothing on the front here about the reset. Dying bill safeguard could be abandoned. That's just scaremongering. 2.4 million receive sick benefits without the need to seek work. And this was certainly a question that was raised with Rachel from Accounts today about, how can you talk about growth when you're not tackling the welfare bill?
Yeah. So a couple of points about... so this Times front page, as you say, there is nothing on here about the big reset speech. There is literally nothing on here about growth. It doesn't mention the word Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, nothing. It's gone with the, assisted dying bill, which we do know is a very emotive and controversial subject. And then actually, so the only thing that sort of is in the sort of DWP workspace is the 2.4 million receive sick benefits without need to sick work, which is not a positive story for the government. So if you're looking at all the papers, the Times, which Keir Starmer, kind of middle of the road,
keeps writing stuff for.
Well, keeps writing stuff for. You might have thought there'd be even just that sidebar actually, where the 2.4 million story is. You might have hoped, if you were the government, to have a sidebar in there about
the Oxcam link.
Oxcam link. I mean, that's been talked about for decades, but Oxcam could be the new Silicon Valley. All of these sound bites that they had put into the speech today, but no. There's the assisted dying bill. There's the 2.4 sickness benefits things, which, by the way, in all of Rachel Reeves' speech, and I understand why she was trying entirely to go on the pro-growth, pro-infrastructure, all the rest of it. I feel like you're using exciting, very fast and loose there, actually.
No, excited.
Oh, excited. I'm
not
so sorry. That was my...
She was trying to be really positive and jolly.
Misunderstood. I thought you said exciting, and I was rather confused there for a moment.
I mean, it's not looking good for them, isn't it? The other story on the Times is NATO job for dozy diplomat who left secret papers at a bus stop. It is not, like you said, it is not the front page. In fact, they'd rather talk about the weirdest workout in the world than Rachel Reeves' growth bill.
Just again on this point about this sort of sickness benefits for the 2.4 million. So Rachel Reeves' speech today was very much on the places, the kind of infrastructure, the
Who's going to do
rather
it?
than the people.
Yeah,
that was exactly what I was getting to. So yeah. In pure comms terms, the Times, I would be looking at this if I was in government and sort of going, that also has not quite worked out how one would have wanted if you were in government.
Well, just none of their messaging is resonating. I mean, is it because they got really horrible, boring voices?
I'm not being... as much as I think Rishi Sunak is actually a really nice man, like, his voice was not the most... and Jeremy Hunt,
but their messaging never really resonated either.
Well, you say that, but sort of the build, even if it became a bit pastiche and a bit comedy when sort of, Boris said it and then Liz said it and then Rishi to sort of just double, triple down and pound the fact that also, even if the repetition of that, got to be slightly comedic, at least at the time it was being said, the build bit was something that people sort of knew or these sort of vaguely recognised had been said by Boris, when Boris would appear in a hard hat somewhere and drive a bulldozer through sort of something. Like, people sort of vaguely sort of knew, the building thing, Conservatives sort of quite want to build. I mean, with this, well, I guess that in pure policy terms, the biggest thing, which I suspect is probably on some other front pages, is the Chancellor Rachel Reeves has just succeeded in kicking off another massive row about the third runway at Heathrow. Why do that?
I don't know.
It's almost like they can't. I mean, they just can't quite. Of all the rows to have, everyone knows that the third runway and HS2, if you're talking about massive infrastructure, capital, government spend, don't pick those two. Yeah. It's almost just like, here is your poison chalice and the knife with which you could stab yourself. Yeah. You just pick one and they're like, OK, I'll go for the poison chalice.
And it is stupid because that is, it appears to be the story that people are picking up on, of course, is the third runway. And how long have we been talking about that?
20 years. Yeah. As long as I've ever been involved in political sort of communication, it's 20 to 25 plus years. And obviously, you know, Sadiq Khan, as you would expect, I mean, entirely predictably has come straight out.
We're going to fight it with everything we've
and
got
said,
against the Labour Party.
Yes. And with very sound reasons. It's one of the few times, you know, as somebody who lives in London, I've actually agreed with Sadiq Khan, you know, because of the worries about the air pollution, the noise pollution, and, you know, his point more widely about sort of general pollution and meeting the Labour government's 2030 climate change pledges. As I say, I've just found it so baffling.
Yeah, and where's Bacon Sandwich Ed at the moment? I mean, he's obviously being silenced in some way, not to interfere with what Rachel Reeves's growth plan is. Anyway, Amy, we've got to take a break. I'll never get that image out of my face, out of my head. Amy Fisher and myself will be back in just a second.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, good to have you along. Amy Fisher is with me in the studio. We're going through Thursday's newspapers. The Mirror, as we said, but then it would, because of its political leanings. The Reeves Revolution, they've called it. Rachel Reeves has pledged a £78 billion boost to our battered economy. The Chancellor unveils a string of projects, including third runway at Heathrow and a UK Silicon Valley. Do you know what, Amy? The first thing I thought, if I was in comms, which I'm not, but if I was, I'd have said, don't mention Silicon Valley. They've just lost $1 trillion, right? You don't want to be saying, right, we're going to have our own Silicon Valley. Oh dear, oops. They've just completely lost so much money.
Well, I just think Silicon Valley is also like a very Americanized thing, right? I mean,
it doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't
does
really
it?
mean anything,
Yeah.
and also we're British. We don't want a British something version of something the Americans have got. We'll do it ourselves.
But to liken it to somewhere that's just
gone bust it, sort of bust itself, and is not entirely without its own problems and demons. But yeah, as far as different pages go, as you say, as you would expect, the Mirror has sort of done something pretty straight, which if you were in government, you might sort of go, okay, few would live with that. I mean, if I was going to be sort of really briefing the Prime Minister. I mean, I wouldn't be thrilled about the fact that the Chancellor's had to give this 7 to 8 million boost to our battered economy. I mean, let's bear in mind, in the middle of the year, before the general election, actually, UK was ahead of the G7 economies, and I don't think anyone can deny, and I don't think even the government would deny, that their first budget was pretty disastrous.
Yeah.
And we shall see in the next few days how much of a revolution Rachel Reeves, she's, the Chancellor's speech has sort of maybe given a bit of a kick to things. I mean, certainly like this afternoon, the markets hadn't really done anything.
No.
They were neither responding wildly positively nor dropping drastically as they did with, say, some of Liz Truss's pronouncements. So I'm actually not being critical of the government there. They just sort of did really a nothing. So as I say, it'll be over the next 2 or 3 days to see what the real fallout of what the Chancellor has said today.
One
really
thing
is.
that occurred to me, and I'm sure other people, when you're talking about these big infrastructure projects, government has an appalling track record for being involved in anything bigger than a toothpick, right? I mean, just awful. All of them. Every single one of them, appalling. Wouldn't trust them with my shopping, right? And so now they're trying to change the narrative from, oh, look what the Tories did, they destroyed everything, it's all doom and gloom, we're all going to hell in a handcart, to now sounding really positive, but without any of the bones to this. I mean, who builds this infrastructure? Who builds these houses? We haven't got enough builders as it is. Anybody can tell you that if they're trying to get an extension done or even their windows changed. We don't have the people, we don't have the skills. The
government actually doesn't have the money. Can I just put that out there?
Yeah. So that's what I didn't hear. I'm always pay attention to what I don't hear, particularly from people like this. And I didn't hear any of that.
So this absolutely goes to the dichotomy of what today's sort of reset speech was about, because as I say, this is the sort of third reset after 7 months, and yet they're predicating it on stuff like this third runway. Even if we had the builders, the skill sets, the money, this third runway isn't going to materialise for about 15 years.
Yeah.
So they're sort of predicating a turnaround for not very popular government of 7 months on something they're promising to deliver in 15 years.
It's the same with the Oxfam.
It's completely
link.
crazy.
Yeah.
The Oxfam link has been promised since about 1965. I think it was first sort of talked about, and actually some building had started in like the 60s and the 70s, and we paused and started and paused like so many times. And if you're literally talking about promising people things on the never never, this is the actual it. And they're not even being shy about it. They're literally saying, trust us, we're going to boost the economy by something that might come into fruition in 12, 15 years' time. I just find it absolutely bonkers. They're not even...
nobody's interested in that, right? No, we want to...
Who can be? I mean, I think... none of us...
how do we judge them? I mean, that's the other thing. There's nothing by which to judge them. They're very keen on not giving us a target. Right, if we haven't started this in 3 years' time, then judge us on it. If this is like 15 years' time, you're going to get another 2 terms. It's not going to happen.
When George Osborne promised the Northern, well, not just promised, when the Northern Powerhouse, do you remember when that was a thing?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the Northern Powerhouse. And actually, I'm going to be honest, I could never particularly really understand what the Northern Powerhouse as a grand strategic vision was. I'm just being completely honest with you. Actually, what was very effective was relatively small, I mean, still in the millions, but in government spending terms, that's relatively small amounts of money. Relatively small amounts of money were sort of parcelled out relatively frequently for very specific community regeneration projects. So if like very specific bits of roadway,
things
like
that you could see.
small bits of roadway, not like the building of a whole new bit of like the M25, but like building a small little bit, or regeneration of a particular town centre or something. That's what the Northern Powerhouse was good at, because people could then think, oh, I hear this Northern Powerhouse thing, oh, and actually I know that's happened just down the road, and I know this stretch of road is actually better, and actually I know there are more buses into town now frequently between Felixstowe and Ipswich. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah,
So
they can see it, they can measure
see it. It was a thing that a thing that happened. And actually, as I say, in government terms, you know, several millions here can make a big difference very, very locally for that particular community. But these billions that get promised for wonderful third runway, or exactly what HS2, I was going to say ran into, but actually very specifically didn't run into, because it was going to stop outside Euston or wherever it was. All of these billions that are promised for these unimaginable benefits in 12, 15 years' time, I mean, none of that really sort of matters. I mean, certainly, no offence, but Rachel Reeves isn't going to be Chancellor in 15 years' time, is she?
Possibly not 15 months.
Well, I mean,
weeks. But yeah, it is really interesting to me as well, because if she's relying, she's talking about this growth, but these things have to be there in the first place to have any effect on growth, right? Actually just saying that they're going to be there will have very little effect on the actual growth of the economy.
All of this just speaks to me of, again, a government. It happens to be Labour in this circumstance, but people don't really realise until you actually get into government that it is quite hard to get stuff done. And as I say, that's why I removed the word Labour when I started to say Labour government, because that's actually an apolitical point. People just don't realise that
the red tape and the
red tape and the hoops and the practicalities, and goodness gracious me, where is the actual money and all of this kind of thing. And this is what all of this just smacks me of. And again, you know, another big part of what she was talking about today, to move, you know, slightly away from the third runway and all the rest of it, although it's entirely related, she was talking about moving sort of the red tape and the barriers around planning when you're trying to build things. Well, I mean, that's great, but a very, very immediate problem that she's going to run into is, prior to the general election, about 15% of constituencies sort of had all of the green belt, Labour constituencies had all the green belt in. Now, obviously, with where Labour have won so many more seats, now about 50% of Labour seats have all of this green belt, which have all this planning around them. And that's just something, I'm not saying that as a Conservative to make a party political point. I'm saying for her internally, she is going to suddenly have a bunch of colleagues
saying
beholden to their constituents, suddenly saying, I actually don't really want this massive, great energy line or new town, you know, new linking highway or whatever it is, and that's going to be a real thing. 15%
and
to
a vote
50%
loser for next time.
Yes, exactly. And some of those Labour seats, whilst Labour did get this, you know, sort of surface level overwhelming majority, actually it was kind of wide but not deep, if you see what I mean. So a lot of the majorities are not huge. So things like planning, if a Labour person got in, you know, Suffolk Coastal, for example, overturned a whopping Conservative majority, now the person there has got a sort of 3.5, 4 majority. That is not a lot. And over 4 years, got some controversial planning decision. That seat's going blue again.
Gone. Yeah. I just don't think they have thought of that, or they're just whoever they're talking to is just hasn't been out in the real world. Or none of them have, I don't think. Anyway, Amy, we've got to take a break. Amy Fisher and myself will be back in just a moment.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, you're with Petrie and Amy Fisher, and we are going through Thursday's papers. The Guardian, Amy, again, they're not going to be happy with this. Chancellor's Heathrow expansion plan hits turbulence over climate. I mean, it's not even her plan. I mean, this is so old. It's so old, it makes me feel young, you know? I just
It's been sort of sad. I mean, it's been 20 odd years we've been discussing this, and then, you know, not to go on, but The Guardian, the Mail have basically got the same headline: Chancellor's Heathrow plan flies straight into turbulence. I mean, this is what's fallen out of the Chancellor's big speech today, which is, once again, this almighty row about Heathrow, which everyone feels sort of very tired about. And yeah, if you just said, I'm sure is not the headline that Number 10 were hoping for if they were wanting to talk about, you know,
how marvellous
growth and reassuring businesses and all of this kind of stuff.
But it is interesting how quiet Miliband is being about this, because he's supposed to be Mr. Climate Change, right? You'd think that he'd be going, no, you can't do this, but of course he's been told to put a bacon sandwich in it or a sock. Miliband, who's the Cabinet's main Heathrow sceptic, will not reign over the government's backing of the project and has told allies that it's imperative that vocal climate champions remain in the Cabinet. In other words, he's keeping his mouth shut because it's in his own best interest to do so. So all this hypocrisy, it just actually really winds me up. The other stories on the front page: children join school unable to use books. It says some children are starting primary school unable to climb a staircase, whilst others use Americanisms because they're spending too much time on screens. And the pandemic has been blamed for a decline in school readiness. I mean, you've had more time to get your kids ready in the pandemic.
I mean, look, my sister's a primary school teacher, and some of the stuff she tells me is, I mean, it's truly shocking. You know, sort of in the younger years, children are coming to school not really necessarily knowing how to go to the toilet or sort of be able to ask how
but
to.
That's the parents' fault. They've had plenty of time to train potty training.
But it's then the teachers who, if you have the child for sort of 5 or 6 hours a day, are the ones who deal with the upshot of it. I remember sort of last year I asked my sister what she wanted for her birthday. She said, I would like a skirt, and she said, oh, can you make sure it's got pockets? So I was like, that's a weirdly specific thing to say. And she said, oh no, because you know, some of the children, when they come in the morning, they haven't had a proper breakfast. So I always try and keep a fruit bars or something in my pockets, because otherwise, you know, the children are hungry and they just can't concentrate. And, you know, from what she says of conversations, you know, my sister's in a nice, I mean, I won't say where, but she lives in a nice part of the, you know, the country. She's not in a particularly horrific catchment area by any stretch of the imagination, and it's a nice school, but some of the challenges that certainly she's seeing with, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds are, as I say, it's truly horrible. So, you know, this headline in The Guardian of children join school unable to use books, I would sort of somewhat say is the thin end of the wedge.
Yeah. Well, if they can't walk upstairs either. What I love about the Guardian front page is a rather fetching picture of Tim Dowling, top left there. Can I carry off a man bag? Well, first of all, Tim, that's not a man's bag that I would suggest you're using there. Lots of men carry bags now, don't they? But they call them rucksacks. Or
there's the famous episode of Friends when Joey's going for, I think it's an acting job, and Rachel, who's then working at Bloomingdale, convinced him to carry a man's bag. And then obviously Joey takes a lot of stick off Chandler and Ross for whether he's got all his makeup and whatnot in there.
But I do think a lot of men, I don't have a problem. You see men carry across the shoulder bags, or, you know, the knapsack. The knapsack is just a handbag. I mean, come on, you're walking along with your little knapsack thinking, you know, this is me, I'm quite bad. It's a handbag. You're just putting it on your
what
shoulders.
annoys me more is then, you know, if I'm sort of going out to lunch with a male friend and he'll sort of like hand me his wallet and go, can you just pop that? Can you just pop that in your bag? And it's like, well, no, I'm carrying enough of my own gubbins around without having to sort of cart yours too.
My handbag, I do reckon that I could survive probably for about a month with the things that are in
Oh,
my
I was
bag.
going to go for about 2 weeks, but sure, if
yeah,
you're
yeah.
going to admit to a month,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
definitely.
because there's a multitude of
Oh.
things in there for emergencies as well. It's like a pharmacy,
Yes.
little pharmacy
Yes,
in
of
there
course.
as well. I've got everything in there. The more than I could possibly
completely
need.
agree, not judging you.
Good. Right, the Daily Mail for Thursday. Chancellor's Heathrow plan flies straight into turbulence. There you go, not exactly what they wanted. The Eye, Reeves backs bigger airports, new rail line and towns as she reveals growth plan. It wasn't really a growth plan, it was a growth wish list. But then it goes on to point out the businesses push to water down new workers' rights, sickness benefit cuts likely due to extra 800,000 claimants and 8 billion welfare overspend. So sickness benefit cuts, remember that's not a headline they would want. Economic headache on the way with 7 billion hit to borrowing costs. Again, that's not what she talked about today. And Labour's regional mayors warn Reeves not to leave the north behind, because actually a lot of this was south-based, wasn't it?
Apart from, I think, a reopening of Doncaster. Sorry, that's making me sound terribly sort of southist, but I think there was some nod to Doncaster.
But it wasn't so much. All the big infrastructure, Heathrow, the Oxcam,
It was very southern focused, yeah.
But like I said, she was very pleased with herself today, which is good. Millennium women feeding dragon erotica craze. That's on the front of the Eye, believe it or not.
Okay.
Yeah, just under the Eye.
Oh yes.
They've changed that recently, haven't they? They've changed the flag, the Eye. On the
Oh,
eye.
this is.
I think it's new.
Someone was telling me about this. Is it called some mix between? Basically, a lot of women are apparently now reading romantic science fiction. But there's a sort of weird word for it. And it's all come out of the Game of Thrones and that kind of thing.
Which is all about how awful women are treated.
Yes. And the one woman in it who did keep the dragon sort of went entirely mad and became tyrannical and sort of... Yeah.
But it's all about throwing women around and raping them and all that kind of thing.
But this is whereas it was usually sort of younger men who were more drawn towards science fiction. Actually now it's just women reading science fiction,
dragon
sort of
erotica.
Yeah.
Never heard of dragon erotica before. Interesting. Maybe I'm missing out. Maybe we both are.
I have no insight into that, I'm afraid.
Me either. The Independent, the Kennedys at war. I watched this today. I found this clip of JFK's daughter attacking RFK's son, over his power addiction. It was very compelling. I don't know if you saw it. And she was reading a letter that she'd written to Congress, I think it must have been.
Because he's been in front having to defend Trump's desire to appoint him as like health secretary, right? So he's been in front of all of that.
Yeah, exactly.
Today.
And now she's saying, I cannot support this any longer. I need to tell you some truths about him. He is incredibly unfit. He is dangerous, unfit for this role. He is dangerous. He has dangerous attitudes.
He's quite a conspiracy.
Yeah, he's
sort of on the
vaccines
fringes.
are the devil.
Yeah.
And so she, honestly, it was a really interesting. Because she literally just sat there in front of a screen, so you saw her and saying, "Look, I wouldn't normally speak for my relatives that died, and they died in service, but they would not support this either. He's a menace," and it was really, really compelling. If you get a chance, have a look at that. It's very interesting. Yeah, I watched that earlier. Again, Rachel Reeves, she's gone back to her brown hair now, I noticed. She's not redhead anymore. Reeves' Heathrow plan to turbocharge economy struggles to take off. So again, cops probe assault at United's Legends Party. This has gone with me. I have no idea what they're talking about. And that's the Sun. They're doing a lot of sport on their front pages.
Look, I recognise David Beckham on that. I have to admit, that's the only way in I have to this story. That's the only one I...
Yeah, I think Gary Neville...
Gary Neville,
idea.
maybe I recognise
No
him.
idea. But anyway, they're doing a lot of sport on the front of the Sun at the moment. And the Telegraph, again, Heathrow will not be ready until 2050. and the NHS told to get back to basics. Yeah, so basically not a happy day for Labour in terms of push through. Amy, we've run out of time. Can you believe it? It goes so quickly.
I was about to say we didn't even manage to get to the star, which
we didn't even manage to get to, which is our favourite,
yes.
and we didn't even get there. I'm so disappointed. Thank you very much indeed.
Pleasure.
We'll
Thank
see
you
you
for
very
having me.
soon, I hope. Thank you. Amy Fisher there, former Director of Communications of the Conservative Party. Right, coming up now for you and me, or you and I, or whatever that is, we're going to be talking about the death penalty, because a new survey has come out suggesting that 55% of people now would like the death penalty brought back. And I think this is probably a reaction to the Axel Cabana sentencing and, in fact, his crime. But do we really want the death penalty brought back? And what would be the problems with that? I hear this quite a lot. People going, yeah, we need the death penalty, we need the death penalty. But do we? And do you trust it? And would you trust this justice system? And why do you think it is that people are so unhappy with sentencing and the way criminals are treated that they now want them dead instead? Get ready to give me a call. I'm back in a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning to you. It is Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And this poll has come out, this survey has come out. A public support for capital punishment, in other words, the death penalty, has surged to 55%, fuelled, it is suspected, by the sentencing of the Southport attacker, Axel Cabana. Now, from what the judge could give, Mr. Justice Guth, 52 years was pretty much the top of that. A lot of people, a lot of experts that I spoke to earlier on in the day were saying it'll be about 30, 35 years before parole. So a lot of people, even those in the know, were quite surprised that he went as far as he did. But a lot of people are saying that's not enough. And actually, since he pled guilty, he should be put to death. And look, I don't want that scumbag breathing on the same planet as I am either. But and the fact that he pled guilty and he was guilty and there was absolutely irrefutable, a lot of people would say, well, that's why he should be put to death. I'm not sure I agree with that. And before somebody phones me and asks me the question that I always get asked, and then, well, what would you want if it was your child that had been killed? And I said, I would say 100% I'd want them dead. I'd do it myself. I wouldn't even think twice about it, right? But that doesn't make me right. That makes me vengeful. That makes me angry. And we are angry at the moment, and we are vengeful at the moment, and we would like to eke out as much punishment physically as we could on this scumbag that killed those little girls, right? But does that make us right? And when you look at some of the countries around the world and the way they use the death penalty, it's abhorrent. It's abhorrent because we say, well, we wouldn't do it for that. We wouldn't do it for that. But it makes us no better, even if we're slightly more selective as to who we killed in the name of justice. It doesn't make us better. It makes us pretty much the same. Really makes no difference. Because they feel justified in killing the people that they kill, right? They say, no, that says it in our holy book, or that says it in our constitution, or that, so where does it start? Who does it start with, and where does it end? Does it become a thin end of the wedge, or can we be controlled depending on, of course, which government gets in? And there's recent examples of countries where governments have changed to become more far right-leaning or more, less interested in justice. It just troubles me, right? Because the fact that we live in the democracy that we live in at the moment is not a given. It really isn't. It's not. To have a benign government, a government that knows that it is there in the service of us. And I would say we haven't had that for quite a long time anyway. So if they're not in the service of us and they are in the service of themselves, what makes you think that justice would then be in the interests of us rather than in the interest of themselves? We don't trust government at the moment. It's at the lowest ebb. And I'm not just talking Labour, I'm talking all of them. So why would we hand something like the death sentence to a government who would make that decision, whether that was a thing, and then to a justice system that we also don't trust? So there's a lot to think about here. We can't just think about today and the fact we want this scumbag dead and let that influence what we don't know is going to happen tomorrow. And that's always my concern, is that we get a bit cosy, don't we? We get a bit confident that, that will never happen. They'll never kill the wrong person. Well, we have done in the past. We have killed innocent people with the death sentence. And there's a possibility that had it been in place over the last few years, we would have killed one or two other innocent people. So is the life of an innocent person, two innocent people, is that the price you're prepared to pay to kill a guilty scumbag like Rudy Cabana? And you might say, yes, that is the price you're willing to pay, until that innocent person is you, right? Or that innocent person is your wife, or your husband, or your child. Are you prepared for them to die accidentally, by mistake, in order to kill Rudy Cabana? And that's kind of where we've got to think. You've got to think about, look, if a few innocent people die, that's fine, unless it's you who's the innocent person, or someone you love. Because they will be somebody's loved one, this innocent person that has been put to death by the state. So that's where I go with this. Do I want to be on the same planet as this scumbag? No. But the cost of killing him, in terms of if we brought back the death penalty, if that is somebody innocent, even one person innocent dying, to pay for that death of killing this scumbag, I think that's too great a price. That's where I'm coming from. But look, I'd love to hear where you are coming from on this. The death penalty wouldn't be as simple as saying, right, Axel, you absolute scumbag, you've been found guilty, in fact, you've pled guilty, and now next week we're going to inject you. It just doesn't work like that, because there are appeals, there's trials, there's all sorts of things in order to get there. America now in the position where they almost can't afford the death penalty, right? Because it's so expensive. In 2014, it's very difficult to get these figures from the States, but in 2014, the average cost of a death penalty, this is in 2014, so you can bet it's 10 times this now, was $3.8 million versus a life imprisonment cost of $1.3 million. It's so expensive. So if you're thinking about it being, oh, well, we don't want to spend the money, you know, housing him in a nice prison cell for 50 years, you'd be better off dead. It's more expensive to kill him, if that's your reasoning, than it is to imprison him. Okay, so, over to you. Do you want the death penalty to come back? Now, this is all very, it's never going to, I can't see it ever happening. I won't say never, because we've seen some pretty weird movements around the world recently, but unlikely to ever come back. But do you want it to come back? 0344 499 1000. Right, straight to the phones. Chris is in Epsom. Hello, Chris. Good morning.
Morning, Petrie. I promised to be a good boy tonight.
Oh, good. Well, do we believe you, though?
Well, when you talk about that scumbag, nobody would have a problem with putting him to death. No. There'd be a queue of people willing to do it.
Yeah.
The thing is, you've got to step back and look at the bigger picture. The bigger picture is that most of the horrendous killings that we've had in the UK recent years, the July bombings in London, the Manchester Arena bombings, Drummer Rigby, all of those were Islamist terrorists. Mm-hmm. And they believe in their death cult that martyrdom is the highest honour they can achieve and will guarantee them a place next to Muhammad and 72 virgins.
I thought it was 75. Has inflation taken over now? Has it gone down?
No, it's often said 69 or 72. But actually,
all right, no, I believe. I'm only joking. Yeah, no, you're right. So actually, in that case, the death penalty plays directly into their handbook, right?
Yes, and there's another reason for that as well. I saw a documentary on Gaza. Must be 3 years ago now, and they interviewed a mother who was very proudly showing off her very, very nice apartment in Gaza. Mm-hmm. And she then showed you the pictures of her 3 sons, all of whom had martyred themselves as suicide bombers in Israel. And she was very proud of the fact that they'd managed to give her this apartment because the Palestine authorities pay a martyr's pension, which is gathered from our charitable monies and the NGOs that the Palestine Authority sweep up, and they pay them a martyrdom pension.
What you mean by you mean Hamas?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now that happens as well, expanded out into the other terrorist groups. It's one of their ways of convincing them that this is the right thing to do.
Well, so and also you've also got with that type of killing the very real possibility that they'll blow themselves up. Although there's a lot of them that are cowards and won't do that. So yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a deterrent either.
No.
Some people are suggesting it's a deterrent. Death to the people that you're talking about, the violent terrorist jihadis, it is nothing. That's what they're aiming for. So, yeah, it doesn't work, does it, as a deterrent either?
No, it's actually, it could be even an encouragement. So you have to be very careful. I'd like to also just mention, because in England we're missing out on it. Mandelson giving his apology to Trump in the papers, right now, but he doesn't realise he hasn't read the room, and we don't understand the room here. Trump will not. I guarantee you, my left arm, he will not be ratified. And the reason is that he cavorted and stayed with Epstein, the same as Prince Andrew did, after the fact that he'd been jailed for sex trafficking. Now, the Epstein list over here is, it's not really in the papers, there's not much of it now, it's a dead story. That is unlike America. In America, it is front page, it's third page every day. Because Trump has said, or has been asked, if he will declassify the Epstein list, which the security services have. They already handed a file, an FBI file, on Mandelson and his Chinese connections, but it's the Epstein thing that will stop him, because that is massive news in America.
But
really
Trump's already approved him. He approved him yesterday. He is Britain's new ambassador to the United States.
My God, I eat my words. I'm going to have to cut my arm off now.
No, don't do that. He is now the. It was I'm pretty sure it was yesterday that Mandelson got the approval. But what Mandelson said before was Donald Trump's a danger to the world, a little short of a white nationalist and racist. That's what he said about Donald Trump before. And now he's saying, I think the president is a nice person. He's fair-minded.
Well, I'll tell you what. Now, all right, read into this what you want. This is pure supposition.
Uh-oh.
So Starmer wanted him in there. Mm-hmm. Trump obviously doesn't want the Chagos Islands deal to go through.
Yeah.
He's now got leverage over Starmer through Mandelson. Because what he knows about Mandelson, he'll turn around and say, listen, you do the Chagos deal, and Mandelson's out of here, and a complete embarrassment to the British government.
That's not a bad call. I mean, look, we all know that these men, particularly people like Mandelson, they're all hypocrites, right? He was only ever going to look after himself. Donald Trump has been manoeuvring people around him that he can control, and maybe it's partly of the. I keep looking at these people and thinking, I wonder if they're on the list, because he's definitely got something on him, right? So,
yeah.
So this is who he's controlling at the moment. So. Yeah, I mean, I can't say that I wouldn't agree with that. I think there probably is something that we don't know, and there will be manipulation. So,
and this government, right? What was announced this evening, probably while you were putting the show together, is just a bit more embarrassment for the Labour government. They announced Miss Osamor. You remember her, the Labour MP? The black Labour MP whose son was done for drug dealing, and she threatened to smash a journalist's face in with a bat.
No, I do remember that. I can't remember her name, though. It's not even made the front pages. Can we just check that?
She was very close with Corbyn and with Starmer.
Yeah, she's been given a new job now, hasn't she?
She's now our trade secretary.
That's right, trade envoy.
Kate Osmar.
Yeah. I remember that. Yeah, no, it was just coming through as I was, but it was too late, obviously, to make it. I'm just checking.
Yeah.
No, it's just too late to make it to the papers. Yeah.
Can I ask you one thing, Petrie?
Go on.
Do you think she'll be taking her drug dealing son on her with her trade missions to South America?
Well, she won't be able to, will she? Because if he's got a criminal record. But that's the other thing I want to know. We're totally off topic now, but I just want to know is. Donald Trump is a convicted felon, right?
Yeah.
He's not allowed to come to the UK. We don't allow convicted felons in. We don't give them visas. Or Australia, or New Zealand, or quite a lot of Europe, or quite a lot of the rest of the world. In fact, America wouldn't accept him.
No, that's true, but they did take Prince Harry. The other thing that... about Ruby Kiana, and you mustn't let this drop from your sightline.
Mm-hmm.
The question is his laptop that the police took.
He had two, didn't he?
They said that he deleted his history files. Now, if you do, I don't know if you how technically adept you are, but if you delete your files on your computer, you don't actually delete them. What you do is what it deletes is the pathway, is the entrance to that file. It basically deletes the entrance to that file. So the information, the file itself, is still there, and it gets written over time.
Right.
But any techie, any half-wit techie worth his salt could pull that information up. And I'm wondering why they haven't been able to pull that information up. And I'm wondering if it says on it that he was talking with radical Islamist groups, because in Belmarsh he has started praying.
No, that's my understanding as well. In Belmarsh, he is now Islamic. He's now, but yeah, I've heard that as well. But yeah, look, maybe it will be a case of if they find out that there was a terrorist element to this, aside from the ricin and the jihadi Hamburg, that they will go back and he will face another charge. But look, he's not coming out of jail.
But it's all obfuscation by Number 10.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I hope that they do. I hope that they do, and I hope we get more public information. It is in the public interest that we know this stuff. They can't argue that it isn't. So I really hope that we do get that information. Chris, you were very well behaved tonight. Well done.
Thank you, Petrie. Have a wonderful show.
Bless your heart. Thank you very much indeed. Chris there in Epsom. So actually, you'd be forgiven for not realising we are talking about the death penalty. The public support for capital punishment has surged to 55%. Do you think we should have the death penalty back in this country? Give me a call, 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hi there, it is Talk and it is Petrie here with you at the moment, and I'm encouraging you to talk back. We're talking about the death penalty. Most Britons want to bring the death penalty back. Loads of messages here. I just want to read some of those. Tonya, if you just wait just for a moment, I will be with you. Kaz says, bring back the stocks and humiliate them in public instead. Death is too good for them. Make them suffer just like their victims did. There's too much of a risk getting the wrong person. Mark from Norwich says, I don't believe many people would have an issue with Axel Rudakabana receiving the death penalty. I don't either. But the problem is the wider implications. It would effectively relegate any other homicide perpetrators where the death penalty is not received to being de facto innocent. It touches upon dozens of other cases, and when things go wrong, millions in compensation will have to be paid by the taxpayer. Very good points there. Thank you very much for those. Bill says, easy solution, have a referendum on the death penalty. However, everyone who votes for reintroduction, their name goes into a draw to be made every time an innocent is killed. And whoever gets drawn is also killed. May make people think long and hard before voting yes. And that's from Bill. The trouble is, the referendums, we're not very good at them, are we? I agree with you, though, because it is all very well. When I've spoken to people before, and they've said, no, it's all right. If a couple of innocent people have to die, that's fine. And I go, what if that innocent person is you, or your son, or your wife? And then they go, well, it doesn't quite work, does it? You know, if you bring it back, you're prepared for some other innocent person to pay the price of being put to death accidentally, but not you. Not me, not my family. Right, let's go to Tonya now, because she's been waiting patiently. Tonya, good morning.
Hi there, Petrie.
Hi there. What do you think again about the death penalty? And are you surprised that as many, the majority of people would like the death penalty brought back?
No, I'm not surprised at all, because I think it's pretty much always been the statistics thing with when they do those kind of referendums. I think in this country people have always been pro-death penalty, so I don't think that's anything unusual, but I'm totally against it myself.
Why are you against it?
Want it?
Why are you against it? Because I'm against it, but I have to reason why I'm against it, and because if something happened to somebody you loved, you'd like me, I suspect, I'd want them dead. But that's called revenge, isn't it? That's anger and revenge, and that whilst they're absolutely viable emotions to have, I don't know whether we can run a country on them. But what are your reasons?
I'd want them dead. Yeah, I'd want them dead if they did it to mine, but I'd want to do it. I'd want to do it to myself.
Me too.
I wouldn't want the state involved, and I know that people wouldn't agree. But so let's say if I had a child and someone killed it, I'd want to go and kill that person myself. I wouldn't want the state to do it. But anyway, but as in the state taking control of these things, absolutely not. And I'll say there's there's way too many miscarriages of justice, and it's getting worse because our courts are just getting more and more corrupt. It's just what's going on. I mean, Lucy Letby is a great example of, is she even guilty? We don't know now. I mean, I never thought she was guilty to begin with, right from day one, but that's another big one. She would be up for death sentence. She's very likely not guilty. She could be a miscarriage of justice. She's not the only miscarriage of justice. There are so many others. And, should we let this this guy, Axel Rudakabana, why should we let him, if, he
change the country?
Why should he then, to punish him, why should we then potentially? And another thing is, bringing back the death penalty, what will that do? That will cost the country a lot of money, and it'll be great for lawyers. I mean, lawyers will...
Oh, they'd love it.
Great for lawyers.
Yeah. I mean, it costs... In the United States of America, it's 3 times more expensive to put someone to death than it is to incarcerate them for life.
And they'll be kept there for years anyway, and then the lawyers will be making so much money out of it. And we're already spending way too much money on lawyers for all kinds of people who probably don't deserve all this money. And it's like, why? Yeah, so that's just one of the many aspects of
because a lot of people go, well, I don't want to spend, because it will cost us about $2.5 million just for his bed and board, right, in a prison. Then you've got other things like, medical care, doctors, mental health care, and all that. all in all, and I was talking to Amy about this in one of the breaks because she used to work in the department. I said, "What is it, about 5 million?" Then she went, "Yeah." That you kind of almost double it because of all the extras that go into a prisoner, right? So, but still, in 2021, I found this fascinating. My team got this together for me. An average of 223 months, that's 18 and a half years, elapsed between sentencing and execution. So that's still millions spent on not only on all of the court cases, but also in the incarceration of these people.
But how is the and also for my thing is well, originally I spoke up to speak to Kevin actually, because he really incensed me because he was saying about oh God, he said why can't we just, because he was focusing on the way that the death sentence is given, and he was talking about how about if we just give them a really nice peaceful injection like we do with our dogs, and I was like, well, hang on a minute, why does someone who's committed the most appalling atrocious child murders deserve a nice peaceful death when there's people, whether or not you agree with the euthanasia is another issue, but there's people who have had in extreme pain in this country over many years who've been begging for a nice death and have been to court and have not been allowed to have one. And yet you're saying this guy who's murdered children should give a nice, peaceful death. That would be rewarding him. If I was him right now and I'd done them, I think that's what I would want more than anything else, because he's going to face hell when if the other prisoners he'll be kept in isolation, but when the other prisoners get to him, and they will at some point.
Oh, they will at some point. Yeah. He's not. I've already said I don't think he'll make it. But murder is murder, and that shouldn't be encouraged. But I don't think that he'll survive his sentence. But you're absolutely. That's a brilliant way of looking at it as well. I'm a big supporter in dignity in dying. I think it's atrocious that we don't have that in place. But having said that, you're right. Why should he be rewarded with a death that somebody else who's done nothing wrong would beg for and doesn't get given? But it's also we don't just go, oh look, it's 4 o'clock. Oh, is it Axel's turn now? Right, go and sort him out. This takes years and years and millions and millions of pounds in legal fees. I mean, in America, I've got some sheets of paper in front of me here saying that in a lot of states in America, there's 27 out of the 50 states have the death penalty, and now questioning whether they can afford to have the death penalty anymore because it's so expensive.
Yeah,
it's so expensive.
Also and there's also, for me personally, I would be, you know how often we get I don't know if you remember, there's what was that? I can't remember their names now, but there was these 2 little girls. Was it Hollywood, Willoughby, or
yeah.
On a lonely lane, and they were butchered. It was awful. But the guy, I think it was Michael Stone, wasn't it, that was arrested? And I think that's
Ian Huntington.
No, I'm mixing up the names. I'm not talking about Ian Huntley. I'm not talking about. There's another one where this woman was walking down a long lane with her 2 children and her little dog.
Oh gosh, yes, yeah. He would have been put to death, wouldn't he?
Now, I think he's some doubt over him. I'm not sure if he's still in prison now or not.
No, he's not. He's out. He's out.
Right, now, at the time when that happened, I remember thinking, oh, God, they picked on the local nutter again. Is it really him? Right? I thought that at the time. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because I myself have had a history, right? I've had a history, okay? Not of murdering or I've never hurt a vulnerable person or a child, but I've got a bit of a history, right? And I've got a mental health diagnosis, right? Now, if I was in the vicinity of some atrocity, let's say next door to me someone was brutally murdered, right, or down the road, I can tell you I would be the sort of person, and this is my past, by the way, I've changed a lot, but I would be the sort of person who might be under suspicion because of my diagnosis, right? Now, I could potentially, and I have been wrongly accused of things before, by the way, could be dragged in, set up, right? We know that this happens, right? We know.
And DNA doesn't have a date stamp on it, right? If you'd been in that house at any point and they found DNA, your DNA, DNA tells us a lot, but it doesn't tell us when it was placed or when it arrived at the scene. And then suddenly you are guilty.
Unless you're a bit, if the neighbours don't like you or they think you're a bit odd or whatever, next thing you know, the neighbours go, oh, yeah, she was like, and people, before you know it, the police have made a case around it, and I've got to say, Lucy Letby, it's all circumstantial, but that's obviously a nurse in a hospital, but you know what I'm saying? You can make a case, and who's to, if we're not demanding, if we're saying circumstances is blah, you can make a case, and they often do this in high profile because the police are under a lot of pressure in high profile cases to get someone. They're under a lot of pressure, and if they haven't got an easy talk, like with Aswad Gabani, he was at the scene or whatever, it was quite. But if they haven't got someone at the scene, they're under a lot of pressure to get someone. And look what happened with the Birmingham Six and the Guildford Four. Would they have all gone to death?
Exactly that. Exactly that. I was just about to mention those two groups, and as loathsome and revolting as they were not guilty, and that of the crime that they were convicted for. And
they
that
were
is
Irish drug addicts. They were. I'm not being funny. One of them was a heroin addict. I mean, 18-year-old heroin addict was one of the Guildford Four. Honestly, would she have had the energy to be a terrorist? She was busy scoring her. Actually, I had another friend in London who was also a heroin addict. He was on the bus when that bus got bombed outside. Where was it? Outside the Old Bailey. And he was Irish, and he was a heroin addict. And that bus
was Russell Square.
He was on the bus.
It was Russell Square,
he was
outside
the
medical, the GMC.
His friend was my sister, actually. His friend was my sister. But he was on the bus. He got blown up, and he originally got arrested and was suspected because he was Irish, right? And he was let go eventually. But he got a hell of a lot of money in compensation, and he went for like a drug treatment program with the money. He went this new black box treatment or something, and he actually killed himself because not deliberately, but somehow after the drug treatment because he got rid of his tolerance, and then he went and he died.
Yeah.
So it all was too much for him. But he was wrongly accused. He was already a heroin addict, but he was just on the bus scoring. He wasn't a terrorist.
No, exactly. And also, there's always the easy way is to find the DNA and work your way backwards, and that's what's always concerned me about the DNA. Well, the DNA there, so that must be the person that did it. It's not necessarily. Well, we know that that's not necessarily true. Great to speak to you, Tonya. Thank you so much. Great call. Got to take a quick break. Back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a very good morning to you. It's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And we're talking about the death penalty. Most Britons want to bring the death penalty back. I have to say that if I did a poll from this programme, I would say that that is not the case. However, let's talk to Jason now, who's in Walsall, or from Walsall, or driving around Walsall. I'm not quite sure which. Jason, good morning.
I've got a laughing at you. I'm not driving around. I'm definitely driving.
You're always on the road, always.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a really sticky subject, Eddie. It's like, I was always against the death penalty. I mean, I spent time in prison myself years ago, and I find the system quite soft, to be honest.
Okay.
But I think in the exceptional circumstances, I do believe that we should bring it back in the case of this person, because he ain't a human being, he's vile and evil. And to be honest with you, we're going to probably be having the same conversation again in 5-10 years' time, when he's sponging the system, trying to get compensation and whatever else, and you're going to have legal solicitors rubbing their hands to gain commission from it. It's just the greed that comes in. I've seen so many people when I was in prison that were sponging the system, and this guy's going to do exactly the same. He'll probably sitting in his cell reading law books on how to get this. We've seen it before, Petrie. People get. It's just going to wind up the nation even more when they know, like, oh, he's just been given £1 million compensation for this or for that. You know.
Yeah, no, I totally see what you're saying. I really do.
Yeah.
But I do think the point that Tonya just made is a really interesting one, and that is, why would we let this scumbag change the way we do things? He's not important. We shouldn't give him that power, if you like. And as for, as you said, lawyers going in there and saying, oh, they hurt your feelings, we need to get you some compensation, or look, the way they arrested you wasn't fair, so you're entitled to compensation. Those scumbag lawyers should be banged up with him, frankly, because we're all sick of that. And maybe the death penalty is too easy an opt-out.
I think there should be a big shake-up with the justice system, massive shake-up. Crime rate isn't going down, is it? You know what I mean? It should be. So there ain't no real deterrent there, even for normal crime. What is normal crime? That sounds a bit wrong, but there's too many people in the system. Like I said, last year, they was getting people out of prison to put the dirty work people back into prison. But I don't know. I just feel personally that, Petrie, I think it's in an exceptional circumstance. Anybody who takes the life of a child in that manner doesn't deserve to walk on this planet. It might sound out of my bed, but I'm thinking of them 3 little girls. They ain't got a life. Their parents, how they feel. They're never going to see their daughters graduate or get married or have grandkids.
But again, and it sounds trite, and I don't mean it to, but people would say, look, killing him doesn't bring them back, and does it bring peace? And I mean, look, if it was me, I'd say, yeah, kill him, because I would want revenge for what he'd done. And I think we're feeling really angry, but honestly, the people we should be angry with is all those people who had the opportunity to stop him before he did this and didn't. But in the meantime, we've got this creature that we absolutely hate for what he did. But what we're feeling is vengeful and angry, and we'd do it ourselves. I think there'd be a queue around the block of people to pull the lever for the drop. I genuinely do, but I don't know whether that makes us as bad as those countries that I mentioned earlier, who also kill people, and we look at them and go, "You absolute, how can you do that?"
Yeah.
When they put people to death.
But it's also like the people, the sickos who are in prison now that have killed children. What about them? Even though they killed them 10, 20, 30 years ago, should they be killed as well? You think he's going to be killed?
Well, that's the other thing, isn't it? Where do you stop? Where do you say this crime is worse than that crime? You know, where do you say that life of that child is not as valuable as the life of that child, where we've sentenced somebody to death? You know, and so there's those things are to be considered. The actual cost of putting somebody to death is vast, and also there is not in this case, right? He pled guilty, and we know he was guilty, but in other cases, you know, are we sure, right? I mean, people keep mentioning Lucy Letby, who is convicted killer. She has been found guilty, but a lot of people are suggesting now that, and I'm not sure I agree with it, are suggesting that it wasn't a safe conviction. So, you know, she would have been sentenced to death.
Yeah, true.
So I don't know. I don't know whether our system is robust enough. I don't think I trust it.
It needs an overhaul. It needs a complete overhaul. You know what I mean, what to do, I don't know, but it ain't working at the moment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's still crime, there's still serious, apart from what he did, there's other crimes that go on, like the kniving, you know, all the knife crimes in London and Birmingham. You know, that ain't being stopped. That's still just as bad as what it was 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah, and if you're going to say a death sentence for somebody who kills a child, you might have an 18-year-old that stabs a 14-year-old on a bus.
Yeah.
You know, do they not? Yeah, do they not get the death sentence?
Yeah. It's a tricky one, ain't it? It's a very tricky one, and but I mean, personally, I think this person, I ain't going to say his name because he don't deserve that. I think he deserves to be given the death penalty. Just him. That's just me. That's how I think, because of the anger and the hatred I have towards him.
I know, and I completely get that, but you will absolutely accept the way I feel as well is exactly the same, is revenge. I just want that. I just want him to suffer, right? I just want him to you know, that, and I think that we need to be better than him. And that is hard. It's really, really hard to do that. But I get you. I completely agree with you, right? And if it was my kid, I'd do it myself. You know, it would be, you know, that would be the end of him, one way or the other. And I have said before, and I will say it again, he will not see 52 years in that prison.
No, he won't. He'll never come out. He'll never ever come out.
No, he won't live that long. I don't think. I don't think. Or he'll be in solitary for the rest of his life, and that's miserable.
I think he'll do something in prison as well.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a coward, right? He killed little girls. Girls. The scumbag is a coward.
Yeah, he's evil.
He's an evil coward. He's not gonna want to go through 52 years of incarceration. You know, maybe there'll be some justice some other way. You know,
maybe, hopefully, but you know, I doubt it. But you never know.
You never know. I personally think, you know, scumbag cowards like him wouldn't want to do the whole. We've seen it before with people like him. They don't do it. They're cowards. Jason, great to talk to you. Fantastic. Do you know what? I know that I want to talk to Simon. If you can hang on, Simon, I'm going to take a very quick break. Here's my last break until the top of the show, and then I can come back to you and spend a bit more time with you. So quick break. Back in a sec.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning. This is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you for the next, is it 10 minutes? About 10 minutes. We are talking about the death penalty because public support for capital punishment has surged to 55%. It's the highest it's been in very, 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 very many years, fueled by the sentencing of the Southport attacker Axel Rudigbana. And a couple of messages here. I can understand the reasoning behind bringing the death penalty back, but I am against it, especially with the current government in power. There are too many miscarriages of justice. A justice system needs to be perfect before we consider reintroducing it. And that's one of my concerns too. Joanna just simply says, why should these evil monsters get the easy way out of it with execution? They should have very basic existence, no enjoyment, no frills, no computer games, a life of reflection and fear of what others will do to them. And my understanding is that this scumbag is in solitary at the moment, or he's kept away from Gen Pop, because I'm down with the kids. Gary said, I don't support the death penalty for one reason only. It's too quick. It seems like an easy punishment. I'd rather they rot away slowly in dire conditions. And that's Gary. Yeah, me too. If only we could be convinced that the conditions were dire. I think they are pretty bad in Belmarsh. It's one of the old Victorian prisons, so I don't think it's not one of those ones where they get a key to their room. Yeah, so I think it's pretty rough in Belmarsh. Now, Simon is in Reading. Good morning, Simon.
Good morning.
So, death penalty, bring it back or not?
Well, I was going to go on a couple of slightly different tacks. Firstly, there's a lot of pressure on the jury to convict people of anything anyway. You've got to be pretty sure what's going on. And if you have a possible result of any conviction being the death penalty, the pressure on a jury to actually then say for definite, yes, we are 100% sure that this person is guilty, could be called into question, because some people who are on jury from all walks of life, may be against the death penalty.
That
or
is
taking
such
another's life.
a good
Do you see
point.
what I mean?
I completely agree with that. And also what you would get then is guilty people walking free because
Absolutely.
they were concerned about it. Yeah, good point.
Take Lucy Letby as your example that you've mentioned earlier. She was convicted, and I would say rightly convicted, but if the result was a death penalty, would she have been convicted on the basis of what was presented to the court?
That is an. Do you know what, Simon? That is something I hadn't thought of, and I like to think that I think of most things, but I didn't think of that, and that is really interesting. I think it's an excellent point, because you will get sort of almost conscientious objectors, right, sitting on a jury. If I was on a jury and the death penalty was on the table, I'd say you're going to have to recuse me. You're going to have to let me go, because I will not be able to make a decision on the basis of putting somebody to death.
Yeah, I mean, if it was on a political motive, things like that, there's all those sort of pressures, and then just going on from that, and I know it sounds so cold-hearted to say this, but the state of the nation at the moment is such that we get knife crime, knife deaths nearly every week. A lot of it is, young kids on young kids, let's say. As in the case you've been talking about. And you can have periods of time when the fervour, I suppose, of the public is such that we go straight to the death penalty. And I think it was Tonya who spoke about the chap who took a hammer to some kids and killed them. And there was no one calling for the death penalty then.
That was Lynn Russell, wasn't it?
Yeah,
her name just popped into my head. Yeah, and her daughter.
And the reason probably being is because at that time you didn't have all this violence going on all the time. And so no one sort of said, well, he deserves a death penalty, and it certainly didn't warrant public conversation.
Well, he certainly didn't deserve the death sentence, because it turned out he was innocent.
Yeah, there was another chap, wasn't there, who was not innocent, and he killed some people. But the point I'm making is that as time goes by and you have cycles of violence in society, then it settles down and all that sort of. If you think about decades and decades as a timeline, then we'll go to the death penalty, and then in 5 years' time, everything will settle down, and we'll say, well, we don't need death penalty. But on
Yeah, no, I get that. But
conversely, you could say, well, is a death penalty a deterrent? I mean, you look at America.
It's not a deterrent. It doesn't stop people. The death penalty would not have stopped this scumbag from killing those girls. He wouldn't have gone, oh, well, I'm not going to do that then because I might die. You know, that wouldn't have stopped him. That wouldn't have been the deterrent.
No, and part of the penalty system in judiciary is deterrence, you know. And if it's not a deterrent, should it be brought? You know,
how does that work?
All the emotional stuff and all that sort of stuff. And if I was in that situation, believe me, I'd do exactly the same.
But also, this scumbag was not an adult in terms of the law.
I know.
So even if there was a death sentence,
he wouldn't have got it.
It would not have applied to a 17-year-old.
And that's most of the kids that are killing each other at the moment.
Exactly.
So you're no further forward, really.
You're no further forward.
You need some nutter or some evil person that's an adult to actually then bring in the death penalty as a thing. And Tonya and various people before said, well, it's going to cost them so much more money
to put them to death. Yeah.
To put them to death with the lawyers sort of raking all the cash in. Yeah. And it would be just to keep them in prison and make their life a misery for the rest of their lives, which is what I would do.
Yeah, and look, that is not going to be a small amount of money to keep this scumbag alive, but to kill him would cost more. You know, and I just don't know. A lot of the people, I wonder if the same people who voted to say, or on this poll to say, yes, I would bring back the death penalty, I wonder if they're the same people who are very concerned at the moment with what they would refer to as two-tier policing. Because if they believe there's two-tier policing, then there's a two-tier justice system, and therefore not all the guilty people get the same treatment as the other guilty people. Just a thought.
Yeah, you're going to have that across the land anyway, because judges look at stuff differently.
So you're never going to get that.
In this case, no one's ever criticised the judge in this case because he gave him 54 years. Yeah, and it's very rare you get that such long sentence.
Really rare. I honestly thought it was going to be about 30.
At the time.
Yeah. I think that
I'm making is, like, if you think about the jury system and the pressures that would be brought to bear on them. Just imagine 12 men and women, good and true, convicting somebody, death penalty, and found not to be guilty subsequently. You know, all those things that...
It's an excellent point, Simon. I'm so glad you made it, because... Yeah, it really would, and I would have to object. I'd have to say, look, if the death penalty is on the table, I'm out. I won't be able to make that decision because, like Simon said, what if they're then subsequently found to be innocent and you've put them to death? I mean, I know it's the judge that passed his sentence, but you would know that they were heading that way if they were found guilty. Really interesting stuff, Simon. Thank you. Really appreciate that. Sylvia, though, in Yorkshire, has a different view. Hi, Sylvia.
Oh, hello, Petra. Well, I believe in the death penalty, and I'll give you 4 people that I'd have hung. Sarah Everard, and that policeman, I'd have hung him. Sarah Sharif, what her father did to her with a baseball bat. This scene in Southport, what he did with the little girls. And who's the other one? There were another one. And what do you think? I'd have hung the 4 of them. There's no deterrent in this country. And what I believe is the prison, that's no deterrent, because the prison is full and it's not working. And I think if hanging were brought back, people that commit these crimes, I know you might say, well, some of these think they're going to paradise. Well, let them go to paradise. You're one less. But we need a deterrent in this country. Every day I'm hearing about knife crime. And if it were my son and someone knifed him and he were just going about his business, I'd want him hung. You might not agree, Petra, but I do.
No, I said earlier on, if somebody did that to my kid, I'd want them, I'd pull the lever myself. But that isn't, that's revenge, that's anger. And I feel your anger, and we all feel that anger. And the people that you've mentioned there are absolutely revolting. I mean, they don't even deserve to be part of the human race. But to kill them, it would cost more, way more, to sentence one of them.
I don't believe that.
It's true. It is absolutely true. You can't just go, right, you're guilty, you're dead. There'd be appeal after appeal after appeal. In America, which is the closest we've got to an example of this, it takes an average of 18 and a half years from a death sentence to the needle. 18 and a half years, and the cost is 3 times more to put somebody to death than it is to incarcerate them for life. And that's in America. We're looking at America. And also, when you talk about a deterrent, I don't think it is a deterrent. I think some people are so inherently disgusting and evil that they don't think, oh, well, I might be put to death, so I won't do it. These people are revolting. They'd still do it. They'd still do it. There's thousands of people